across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. Thank you to Julia. Back tomorrow, 10 o'clock. So, he's gone. Starmer resigned as Labour leader, announcing from the steps of Downing Street that he's no longer best placed to lead the party into the next general election. Could have told him that on July the 4th, 2024. Nominations for his replacement open on July the 9th, and a new leader expected before Parliament returns in September. It could be quicker than you think. Andy Burnham, of course, already confirmed he will stand to replace Starmer, with his path to number 10 already clearing, as former Health Secretary Wes Streeting has abandoned his own leadership ambitions and thrown his full weight behind the Makerfield MP within hours of that Starmer resignation speech. And Donald Trump claims vindication, having predicted Starmer's departure and blaming his downfall squarely on his failure to grip immigration and energy. Well, he's right about the first two. What he was doing, mouthing off like an old fishwife on social media at his age, is anybody's guess. The US president saying simply that Starmer failed badly and wishing him well on his way out. Everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news. There's always a bit. We're also live in Euston for the arrival of the next Prime Minister. Details to come. Everything you need to know, of course, right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Will Andy Burnham change Britain? It was an ordinary Monday morning, of course. A sunny day. Birds were singing. Busy Brits had a spring in their step as they started a new working week. And then this happened.
The question my party is asking now is whether I am best placed to lead us into the next general election. I have heard the answer of my parliamentary party to that question, and I accept that answer with good grace. Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
Oh, just run that last bit past me again, Keir.
I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
Oh, well, that is that then. He's gone. Keir Starmer resignation bringing to an end one of the shortest and, frankly, strangest prime ministerships in modern British history. Boy, have we had a few of those. Less than 2 years after winning a landslide. That's what really makes it curious. He leaves office under pressure from his own MPs, poor polling and a growing sense that nobody was entirely sure what he actually stood for. His critics say Starmer's biggest problem was simple. He looked more like a manager than a leader. That's very true. And he was about as inspiring as a breeze block. I mean, we've got lots of things where it went wrong. Donald Trump called it out. It didn't need the US president to help us on the way. Failing to get a grip of illegal channel migration. Never really solving the cost of living. Tinkering around the edges is no good. Presiding over repeated policy U-turns. How many were there? About 57. Allowing Labour's infighting to fester. And, of course, associated with damaging controversies. Mandelson being the main one. To his opponent, Starmer's government felt like a sat-nav constantly recalculating the route. Supporters say, yeah, but he got NHS waiting list down. Well, I mean, a tiny bit in some areas, nothing substantial. Wages rose faster than inflation for much of his time in office. Ish. The verdict? Critics saw caution turning into drift. And, of course, supporters saw pragmatism in difficult times. Either way, the political irony is delicious. After spending years convincing voters that he wasn't Jeremy Corbyn, his downfall came because voters never became convinced he was either Keir Starmer. It was interesting, and now opposition MPs are calling for a general election rather than a coronation of a sandal-wearing socialist from Manchester. All right, Liverpool, but you take the point. Let's have a listen to Nigel Farage.
I've no idea whether there'll be a contest or a coronation, but what I do know is the British public have simply had enough of political parties chopping and changing their leaders at will. We vote for somebody in a general election to be our Prime Minister. We expect them to serve their term. And barring ill health or exceptional circumstances, what is going on here, frankly, is reminiscent of a banana republic that has totally devalued the very process of general elections and democracy. I demand, we at Reform demand, a general election.
And I get that. And all because the Prime Minister said this.
I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
Well, you won't miss that, will you? I will resign tomorrow, today, all the rest of it. I think Farage has got a point there. But, of course, Andy Burnham is, I mean, it's all but done, isn't it? He's likely to be the man in charge, could be in just a few weeks' time. He's currently on a train heading for London town. We have with us... we will have with us in a couple of moments' time. Right, OK, we won't have with us. Thanks for the heads up. But we do have a little clip of the next Prime Minister.
It is our last chance to change, but we're going to take it, aren't we? We are going to take that opportunity and we are going to lay out a new path for Britain.
A new path for Britain. Is he the man that's going to change Britain? Seriously? I mean, what do you feel about this? Because I kind of sense the very same criticisms that we had over Keir Starmer. What's his ideology? What's his philosophy? What's his point of direction? What underpins his thinking? What does he feel in his bones? We couldn't make that stick with Starmer, couldn't we? Could we? But I sense Burnham. I mean, King of the North. I mean, really? Really? What are we, kids? This is ridiculous. Not The Simpsons. This is real life, for God's sake. Samara Gill, our reporter, is at Euston Station, awaiting the arrival of Big Andy. What's happening, Samara? Is the train coming in? Can you see the steam? I'm sure he's on one of those old-fashioned ones.
Hi, Ian. I hope that Keir Starmer is drying his tears because the King of the North is arriving here in London and making a beeline to Westminster to take his job, it seems. There is massive momentum building up behind me. There's a lot of reporters. They are already trying to bat people away. Well, I've got something to say. I don't think this press scrutiny is going to go away from you, Andy. I don't think you'll be able to duck and dive. So, yeah, we're just getting ready for him to arrive in about just a couple of minutes.
Well, when he does, I'm sure you're going to go chasing him down platform 14, or is it 13? But we'll cross straight back to you, Samara. 13. Oh, unlucky for some, right? That's the one he's arriving on. What does that mean? That's Samara Gill at Euston Station, waiting essentially for the next Prime Minister. It's all a little bit odd. Reem Ibrahim's just popped into the studio. I've no idea why. She was in Washington last time I spoke to her. Suddenly pitches up.
Hello,
how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
You're looking good for a bit of Capitol Hill.
Well, thank you. It's great. I flew in on Saturday,
nice.
And already what we have seen is the government has collapsed. So clearly...
So you turn up, the government collapses.
Yes, it's
That's
not a
bad.
coincidence.
It is weird, just on this very first point, and I understand, I saw a lot of people on social media making this point. I know this is democracy in action, you could say. It's the system we have. You become an MP if you want to challenge. That's great. But given the sheer breathtaking speed of this, less than a week ago, Andy Burnham was not an MP. In 2 weeks' time, he could be the Prime Minister. That's a bit weird.
It's insane. I mean, it's so interesting because of the way that the Labour Party's own constitution works and how exactly Andy Burnham could just be accelerated into that position. I mean, it is absolutely how democracy works. We know that Andy Burnham did very well in the Makerfield by-election. I think it was about 55% of the vote that he received. I am personally quite concerned about all of this, though. I think that fundamentally Keir Starmer's legacy is of mass surveillance, digital IDs, banning young people from social media, banning cigarettes for adults of the future, telling people what they can and cannot say, tanking the economy. More than 1 million young people are now NEETs, not in employment, educational training. This is not a very good legacy. But then you look at what Andy Burnham is proposing, especially with his friends over at the New Economics Foundation, and it's worse. It is so much worse. We are talking about nationalising some banks and introducing further restrictions, even more net zero, even more regulations, higher taxes, wealth taxes, driving the successful people in this country out. So when we're looking at the current situation, I do not feel optimistic at all. Yes, it is exciting, and yes, it's politics. But is there any reason for optimism? I don't think so.
It's just a bit strange, isn't it? And whether... I was saying just before you came in, we never knew what Starmerism was, really. I mean, it was a sort of managerial role. He was kind of like a sort of manager of Iceland, which, by the way, nothing wrong. All the great managers of Iceland, we salute you, especially for your frozen sausage rolls.
We love the frozen sausage
rolls.
rolls.
We love those, don't we? But, you know, when you're the Prime Minister, you're not meant to be like the manager of Iceland. You're not meant to be like anyone else. You're meant to have a sort of an underpinning of a central philosophy, a core of direction. You don't get distracted by going, oh, I better change that and go this direction. You go, no, this is the direction we're going in. We didn't have that. And my sense is with Andy Burnham, and it's driving me nuts, this King of the North thing, that, you know, where did that come from? Half an hour ago, nobody ever said that about Andy Burnham, and suddenly he's the King of the North, because he's got a northern accent, really? I mean, he's not literally the King of the North, but the idea that politically he's some kind of... No one ever mentioned... If I'd done a phone-in a year ago, this is absolutely true, and said, name over the last 20 years great politicians, whether they sat in a Labour cabinet or a Conservative cabinet, I reckon I could sit here and do a 6-hour phone-in. I don't think Andy Burnham's name would ever have come up.
It's interesting because Andy Burnham is very popular in Manchester, of course.
Sure, I get that.
He's been able to create that, but local politics and the sort of jurisdiction that a city mayor has is very, very different to the Prime Minister. I mean, you know, not even to mention sort of the foreign policy aspect of that. You know, what would Andy Burnham look like on the world stage shaking hands with President Donald Trump? There is all of that aspect of it, but even just domestically, looking at the policy decisions that Andy Burnham will now be able to curate, you know, this idea that, you know, he calls it Manchesterism, or he says it's business-friendly socialism, and it's meant that he is wants to nationalise a lot of industries. He wants to bring the public train network back into government hands entirely, and what he has done in Manchester, this Manchesterism, if you will, is effectively borrowing more money and spending more money, right? They are borrowing more and more money, and that's borrowing it from future taxpayers. And Andy Burnham has said that effectively what he wants is for the government to borrow even more money in order to fund all of these infrastructure projects. Now, we've got to be very clear about how enormous the state currently is. Public spending as a proportion of GDP is about 47%. So what does that mean? It means that half the economy is the government, the taking aspect of the economy, not the private sector, which is actually creating businesses, creating jobs, creating that wealth, is just over half. The rest of it is all government bureaucrats, it is civil servants, it is NGOs, it is government spending. And this is an absolutely astronomical situation to be in, because currently the only future that we have for Britain over the next few years, at least politically, is more of this. It's more government, it is more spending, it is more taxes.
And that's what I can't... You know, you'd think of all things. I often look at people like Andy Burnham. I met him a couple of times, and, yeah, he is quite a nice bloke. No, but that's not really what we're judging somebody on. You can be lots of nice people out there. I don't think they'd all make great Prime Ministers. I can't really work out why Andy Burnham, or what Andy Burnham's kind of direction of travel is, other than the one you just said. And if you look at some of the people he's likely to surround himself with, the Angela Rayners of this world, I mean, they love a bit of public spending, don't they, in that sense? Not in a good way, as in we're going to invest in this, just in a way that it's sort of in their core political DNA to think that big governments are better, and a lack of understanding of business. I mean, you look at the sort of all the housing and the rules and regulations around landlords and the like. You know, a lot of that was certainly Rayner's implementation. I know it predates that government.
Well, this is the interesting thing. A lot of these regulations came from the Conservative Party.
They did.
So the Conservatives in government, over the last 14 years of their governance, created the highest tax burden since the Second World War. They introduced all of these new restrictions and regulations that didn't quite get to be passed. So then what happens when Labour come in? They take what the Conservatives were already going to do and triple the amount of regulations and restrictions that will add. So we're talking about the Renters' Rights Act, which the Labour Party then took on and passed and made even stronger, and the Employment Rights Bill. These are regulations on the way in which people are able to live their lives. If you're a landlord in this country, you have been totally screwed. I mean, it really is quite awful. And when you're looking at the way in which that impacts tenants, if you are a renter, you are far less likely to be rented to if you are a more risky tenant, because landlords can't get rid of you very easily. It is about incentives. Now, as you just said, Ian, this is core to the philosophy that this particular party and a lot of the politicians within it are adhering to. They believe fundamentally that government is good, that government control is good, that government policy is good, that if the government takes money from certain people, namely the wealthy, and spends it, they can spend that money in good ways. And that is a fundamental philosophical idea that I wholeheartedly disagree with. I think very clearly what we have seen in this country is the larger the government has become, the worse state the economy is in, the harder it is for young people to get jobs. I mean, just focusing on young people for a moment, I'm currently writing a piece for where I work at Reason magazine on the British brain drain, because we are seeing every single year over the last 5 or so years more and more young people leaving. And I think that that's something that we have to really
likely to continue as well, isn't it?
Very likely to continue. The people that I've interviewed are often young, in their 20s. You know, these are not pensioners that are deciding to retire in Spain. This is young people leaving Britain because they can't have children, they cannot afford a home, and ultimately they're just like, I don't want to be taxed so much. If I even, you know, one of the girls I spoke to, she was a business owner, and she goes, well, I wanted to start a business in the UK, but it was just so difficult to navigate the regulations, and the business just would have failed because of how high taxes are. So she moved to Dubai.
And that's not an uncommon story, is it? We will talk some more to Reem in just a second. 0344 499 1000. Will Andy Burnham change Britain? I mean, we're bound to ask that. We'll also take any aspect of this resignation that we heard today. We kind of knew it was going to happen. Certainly would have happened this week, but there it was, straight out the traps on Monday morning. And Andy Burnham, I don't know if you saw that image of him in some of the papers this morning with his Birkenstocks on. The socialist in sandals, Andy Gandy, where is he? You can see that image there. I mean, I look at that picture, Reem, and I just think, can you imagine Donald Trump wearing a pair of sandals?
No respect. Put on a tie.
I mean, I know it's his day off. I'm not suggesting he's always got to dress up. But where are we going with this?
No, but it's all a photo op, isn't it? He's trying to look as though he's the king of the North. He is a regular working man. That's all what they're trying to do. They're trying to portray themselves in a particular light.
I can't unsee that picture.
No.
I now know what Andy Burnham's big toe looks like. I'm not meant to know that about a Prime Minister. Thoughts on that? Also, are you having some kind of party or celebration? Call us up if you are, as a result of Keir Starmer going. Of course, this is not the end of the Labour government. For many, it's just the start of the Labour government. Thoughts on all of this? 0344 499 1000.
What they're ashamed of is the English flag. Scottish flag, fine. Welsh flag, fine. Irish, everything like that's marvellous. But no. We can't be English. And this has been going on for a long, long time.
He would be Prime Minister of the most toxic political brand in the country at the moment, which is Labour. And that is what we will be battling against.
Our Prime Minister is allegedly attacked by another nation and nothing is said.
This is a reminder that Russia regards the United Kingdom as a hostile power.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
The Burnham Express is making its way towards Euston. James says, oh dear, Euston, we've got a problem. Yeah, says Jim in Wanstead. Lee, Saffron Walden. So Andy Burnham is King of the North. Well, so was Ned Stark, and we all remember what happened to him when he went south. Sean Bean at his very best, I have to say. Mr. Collins, I won't make a decision on Burnham until we know what his father did for a living. It's a very good point, isn't it? Was his dad a... I'll tell you in half a second. It's just coming to me. It's just coming to me. Burnham's dad was... did his mum work in a... No, what did his dad do? Finn? Telephone engineer, that's right.
There we go.
His mum was a receptionist.
I must say there is something particularly British, and I can see this now that I live in Washington, D.C. There is something particularly British about politicians wanting to be seen as though they are really poor.
Yes.
And it is a really quite uniquely British thing. And I see it culturally, you know, I see it, you know, when I was at university, everybody that went to private school hid the fact that they went to private school. And when I was like, oh, you know, I just went to a normal state school, people would be like, oh, really? Like, you know, it's sort of a...
You go to America, you speak to somebody in America and say, yeah, I grew up on a farm in Texas. We had 564,000 acres. We used to bathe in dollar bills.
Yeah.
It was like they're very proud of how well they've done.
They're very proud of their wealth. And I actually think there is an attitude difference, just economically, because in America, if you say, I want to start a business, people will try and help you and say, wow, that's amazing, like, that's fantastic. My friends did this and this and this, and let me connect you with this person. Whereas in the UK, it's like, oh, you don't want to do that. You know, it's sort of, there is a cultural difference.
Yeah.
And I think that economically, it does feel as though Brits are slightly less optimistic about themselves.
John in London says, I'm rejoicing. Reform UK have kicked Starmer out of Downing Street. We forced that by-election. Bring on a general election. I don't really think that's the story there.
No,
it came around
so. I mean,
because
Farage has just
Josh,
said,
the MP...
Farage has just said that, you know, he's calling for a general election. And, you know, Mike Tapp, MP, there are a couple of backbenchers that are saying it's absolutely important that we have a general election because, of course, when the Conservatives switched around Prime Ministers, all of the Labour MPs were saying, this is outrageous, you don't have a mandate, you must call a general election. Now, if this Labour Party contest does indeed become a contest, so on July 9th, I'm sure you've already said this on the show, but on July 9th, the nominations will open. If it is the case that it's just Andy Burnham that is standing, then there won't be a contest and he could quite literally be number 10 in 3 weeks. If, however, somebody else does challenge him, so Wes Streeting was sort of seen as the main challenger, and he's now just said, that he is backing Burnham.
Yep.
But there are other people that it could be. You know, it could be Ed Miliband, it could be Angela Rayner. There are multiple people that could decide to challenge it just so that there is a competition. If there isn't a contest, then really Andy Burnham has zero democratic mandate. If there is a contest, at least Burnham can say, I've got the mandate of the membership of the Labour Party.
He says he wants a contest, doesn't he? So it's rather than a coronation, as they keep saying.
But they might end up getting somebody that is particularly unpopular. Maybe somebody like Ed Miliband, who probably won't win the Labour membership. Well, he is... I mean, he is very popular, but compared to Burnham, he isn't. And perhaps that will then give Burnham the opportunity to say, hey, guys, look, I had a contest and I won.
But at least Ed Miliband became the leader of the Labour Party. Andy Burnham tried twice and failed. Now he's kind of got there by default. I know what John in London was saying, but, of course, this only came around. Reform didn't really kick Starmer out. It was Josh, what's his name, the previous MP, Josh Simons, the previous MP in Makerfield, who stood down to allow Andy Burnham to stand. I mean, that's in itself, I find a little bit distasteful. That let's allow a man to grow his career. I'm going to step down because it will be inevitable that this, well, will end up as we've arrived at today.
I do get what you mean when you say that it's a little bit distasteful because it was such a clear indication that this MP, Andy Burnham being elected as the MP for Makerfield, was the first step towards him going to number 10. And it sort of takes away the idea that MPs are there to represent their local constituencies.
Yes.
So I do completely understand what you mean when you say it's distasteful. I agree. I think that this is sort of part of the way that British politics works.
Yep.
Everything is to do with convention. It's to do with what is acceptable and what isn't. Technically, nothing, nothing incorrect or illegal was done. You know, Andy Burnham followed absolutely every rule that he had to, but it's just not really what is done in British politics, and I don't like it. I mean, Andy Burnham specifically, as you said, comes across as a very kind person. I've bumped into him in a Westminster pub once. He's lovely in person. Took a selfie when I wanted to, very, very kind person in that respect. But his politics is just quite simply more of the same. So if we can talk a bit more about Burnham and what he stands for.
Yeah.
There was a profile in the New Statesman over the weekend looking at one member of Parliament who is supposedly going to be Andy Burnham's economics advisor, or perhaps even his chancellor if he was to become Prime Minister. And she used to run the New Economics Foundation. This is a think tank, if you will, that is quasi-Marxist. They, they really do advocate for some quite radical stuff. Minimum wage packages, forced selling of companies to their workers, to the employees. Some of the policy proposals are so draconian and, I mean, again, quasi-Marxist or indeed Marxist.
Yes.
Plural, just Marxist. And I do think that we have to be very concerned by this because...
This is somebody who could be his chancellor?
Yes, so this is, I'm forgetting her name, but one of the members of Parliament for the Labour Party, and she is, according to the New Statesman, potentially one of Andy Burnham's key economic spokespeople, or at least will be. The question is whether or not that particular influence will be there. The New Statesman seems to think that Andy Burnham doesn't necessarily have, or at least in this profile, Andy Burnham doesn't necessarily have the real economics brain, and so he is sort of delegating that to a quasi-Marxist. And that is very concerning.
What I find interesting is that that sort of type of thinking that you've just alluded to there, these are the people that say trickle-down economics never works and that kind of thing. The other thing that definitely doesn't work is that the left, with this kind of economic approach to things, that you tax people who are doing rather well. You make their lives more difficult, but you don't make anyone else's lives better, but they think you do. So they feel good. There's a nice warm feeling in the pit of their bellies as they sleep at night, going, oh, we've now got a 52% tax rate. Isn't that fantastic? Do you think my sister is going to be better off as a result? No, she's not, and neither will anyone else. It makes you feel good. You've taxed some people who have done all right for themselves, and that money's gone nowhere else.
Well, this is the point. It's the idea that government does well when they spend money. And, this isn't to say that, I am a libertarian, but I'm not going to sit here and say that every single thing the government does is terrible. But when you look at most of what the government does, it is pretty terrible.
They
waste money so often. The government spends foreign aid in countries that are, or areas of the world that are wealthier than some parts of the UK. We are wasting so much money on NGOs and charities and bureaucrats. It is insane. The regulatory state, the arms of the state, the tentacles of the state are so far-reaching and so enormous. And again, I said this earlier in the programme, we're talking about 47% of the economy now being the government. That money comes from somewhere, and it comes from the hard-working people in Britain that are every single day being squeezed. I have zero reason to be optimistic as a result of this new contest.
Finally, but because we're British, we should do this, Reem. Let's talk about the weather. It's too hot out there. I tell you what, I went down to... Shall I start that sentence again, like in a coherent manner? I went down to Folkestone yesterday.
Oh, lovely! Folkestone Beach.
Say that? Have you been there? It was...
it is nice.
Listen, I know the area really well. As a kid, it was so exciting because I grew up nearby. It was really exciting to visit Folkestone. Then I ended up working there as an adult for a bit, so I know the place quite well. Hadn't been down for a while, really... done it up quite a lot down by the harbour and everything, some nice fish restaurants. It was really, really lovely. And the weather was perfect. It was about 24 degrees, bit of a breeze that you get on the beach, sitting there with the kids. It was a lovely sort of Father's Day thing. Loved it. But I did think to myself, oh, give it 2 days. It won't be 24 degrees, it'll be 34 degrees, maybe 36, maybe 38.
It's insane how hot it is.
It's going to be properly hot.
It's going to be properly hot.
Couple of weeks, is it 2 weeks of this?
Might say too hot. I will say, one of the interesting things about comparing America to the UK, and I never really realised this until leaving, and I moved over in January, why don't we have air conditioning anywhere? On the tube, you've got the Circle Line, which has like barely some air conditioning. But, you know, I was on the Central Line this morning and I was like, we don't have to live like this. We actually don't have to live like this. And I hate to make it political, but it is partly because energy costs are so high, because of net zero, because of the regulations, because we do not allow ourselves to increase the supply of energy. But just on a personal level, Ian, I come back to London to visit my family, renew my passport, and all I can feel is hot and sweaty and sticky. And I just think, take me back to America, please.
Yeah, the aircon and kids in school, everywhere you want to go. Just a bit of aircon. You don't.
Yes.
I mean, some people have it at home. We've got a portable one, but you have to hang a pipe out the window to make it work. Which is.
Did you know?
Looks like we've got an elephant in the bedroom from outside.
With the trunk out.
It is. Yeah, it's
Did
a bit
you know
weird.
that more Europeans die of extreme heat than Americans die of gun deaths per capita?
Is that right?
Because Europeans are so utterly stupid with their energy policy that aircon is just not a thing. You know, you might get it in some offices, you might get it in some industrial businesses, but you do not get it in most households because it's just far too expensive to run. In America, everybody has aircon.
It's just there. It's just there, isn't it? There's nothing
given.
weird about it. Listen, Reem, good to see you
It's
again.
great to
when
see
are you,
you.
When are you back to the hill?
On Friday.
Friday. You love it over there,
I
don't
do
you?
love it.
It's a
It's
great
great.
place. I mean, Washington is just a stunning place. Every part, the tarmac smells of news. Everything smells of news. 0344 499 1000. Reem, good to see you.
Great to
We will
see
speak
you.
again soon. Peter Cardwell's going to join us as well in a few moments' time. He's not on a train with Andy Burnham, but he's right across this story. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So what was it, about 9:30 this morning when we heard this?
I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
Yes. Well, some people said no. He got very emotional. I kind of get that bit on a human level. He brought it on himself. The trouble with Keir Starmer, he just, and I genuinely, intelligently and objectively could say this with real confidence, he just wasn't very good at being a Prime Minister. And in fact, he's not the only one that wasn't very good at being a Prime Minister. Loads of elements in the pie chart to doing that job. In addition to policy, you've just got to be personable, accessible, grounded, intelligent, insightful, all of these things that are required more so in the 21st century than ever, and he just didn't tick enough of those boxes, if any. Let's speak to our man Peter Cardwell, Talk presenter, of course, knows his way around the political block, joins us live from that famous street called Downing. Peter, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Yeah, just taking in the day. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Downing Street, but Ian, my goodness, I'm about to be reporting for Talk on my 5th Prime Minister in a few weeks' time. I've only been at the station for 6 years.
That's right. Yeah, you've got almost one a year. I mean, we've had so many. I mean, there's a very serious point to that. We can, this used to be the gag that we would have about the Italians, didn't it? That they changed their administration every couple of months. And here's us on our 7th or 8th, whatever it happens to be. And I think Tony Blair made the point. You can't. Doesn't matter whether you're left or right, Conservative, Labour. No country is going to succeed with that level of inconsistency.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think that comes to the very heart, actually, of what's next, because when we're thinking about Andy Burnham, what does he actually believe on economics?
Yeah.
We're hearing so much speculation about who his Chancellor would be. If it's Wes Streeting, that would be a very, very different Chancellor to, for example, Ed Miliband, who's also talked about as his Chancellor. So I think we're in a situation where a lot of people are projecting what they think Andy Burnham will do, but we don't really know, and he's not probably going to be tested that much because there's not going to be a contested leadership election unless something really remarkable happens between now and the 9th of July and 81 MPs back someone other than Andy Burnham. I can't see it happening, but as we know, predictions in politics are often a mug's game.
Yeah, and it seems, because we've got this date of July the 7th, isn't it, that we'll be able to...
The 9th.
July the 9th. If nobody's come forward but Andy Burnham by July the 9th, does that mean July the 10th Andy Burnham is the Prime Minister, or is there still another process to go after that?
Not quite. So, in theory, Keir Starmer could be a candidate if he wanted to. He doesn't need anybody to nominate him. He is the leader of the Labour Party at the moment, but he's resigned from that position, and he now won't be within that contest at all. He is going, that is absolutely clear. Andy Burnham says he's going to enter. Wes Streeting says he isn't, and Al Cairns probably wouldn't get the 81 names. I would doubt Angela Rayner or Ed Cooper or anyone else will do that other than backing Andy Burnham. So if Andy Burnham puts his name forward and has 81 MPs, we think that about 200 MPs have actually said they'll vote for him and said they want him to be Prime Minister at the moment. Well, then that's basically it, although the nominations will be open for about a week, but if Andy Burnham comes forward with, say, 200 MPs or even just the 81 he needs, it's highly unlikely anybody else would come. There is a window, but yes, he could be the Prime Minister standing behind me here on the 17th or perhaps the 18th of July, so pretty soon.
What is it that turned his own party against him? Because, you know, political careers in this respect tend to end not because of opposition MPs, but because of your own MPs. We've seen this one played out on a number of occasions. You could look at this, you could turn the telescope around a little bit, Peter, and say, in terms of policy, firstly, Keir Starmer was mostly doing what most Labour MPs wanted him to do. You've got the John McDonnells and the like that would always disagree with him, and the Sultanas who now are part of another party, but you've got that part of the left that would disagree. But generally speaking, he's put in place, he will make claims of growth might be almost non-existent, but it's bubbling away, it's kept buoyant. They would make those kind of arguments. So firstly, I would say he's doing what most Labour MPs thought he was going to do, and they would be happy with it. Secondly, if Andy Burnham comes in, given the state of the finances, he's not got an awful lot of wiggle room to make any fundamental difference. So what is Andy Burnham going to do to Labour that Keir Starmer couldn't do, and what were all those Labour MPs grumpy about?
I think they're going to be grumpy again very, very soon with Andy Burnham, because we don't really know what Andy Burnham stands for on a national level. When it came to Keir Starmer, certainly there were many problems in regard to welfare, for example. He spoke today, actually behind me, and said that one of his greatest achievements as Prime Minister was taking 500,000 children out of poverty. Now, he didn't want to do that. That's not something he wanted to do. That was a decision he made because he didn't have the support of his own party, and it shows how volatile the Labour Party is when you have a huge majority, the kind of majority that most Prime Ministers can only dream of. Someone like Theresa May could only dream of having such a large majority, yet still Keir Starmer faced many of the same problems that she did, for example, trying to get things through the party. Now, the Labour Party is very divided, but what they were united on was that Keir Starmer simply wasn't the man for them. It's usually something that happens, it's usually some crisis or an election, or, you know, with Liz Truss crashing the economy, for example, with Rishi Sunak it was the election, with Boris Johnson it was Partygate. There's no one thing you can actually look at, and with Keir Starmer that's sort of typical of his time as Prime Minister, because it was a lot of little things. It was a bit of foreign policy, it was the Mandelson scandal to some degree, it was the fact that he couldn't get his welfare reforms through. There were a lot of small things, but bigger than the sum of their parts, I think, when it came to Keir Starmer, and essentially they just lost faith in him as a Prime Minister. He went through people very, very quickly. We saw lots of resignations, we saw him getting rid of a lot of advisors, for example, and sacking various people, so there was no consistency there, and my argument with Keir Starmer has always been that there was never a plan, there was never a vision there. He's not political enough. Andy Burnham may well be more political, but we need to know what the plan is, and he needs to to reveal himself, but he's absolutely no incentive to do so. There will be no debates. There will be probably a few interviews, but what he thinks on defence, what he thinks on foreign policy, we just don't know.
What we do know is that Angela Rayner is likely to be back in the cabinet. Louise Hay is a 100% cert to be back in the cabinet, I would suggest, bearing in mind she was essentially in charge of his campaign for Makerfield. Ed Miliband will remain in the cabinet, although not necessarily as Chancellor. There's a lot of controversy over that one.
There certainly is, and who the Chancellor is a huge question for Andy Burnham, and says an awful lot about the kind of Prime Minister he wants to be. But as I was saying a second ago, you know, who is that? Does he really care about energy enough for it to be Ed Miliband? And if energy and net zero is the #1 priority of this government, well, by its very nature, something like defence simply won't be. What about welfare? Is there a real desire to reform that, for example? Is that something that could win Labour the election in 3 years' time? Or will it be the case that they look to fight the left? Or do they look to the Conservatives and Reform UK? I mean, I followed politics all my adult life and some of my life as a teenager and a child as well, and I really don't know exactly what Andy Burnham stands for. He's on the soft left, but there's so many questions we don't know. Who he appoints as Chancellor, that is the #1 question about what his vision for this country will be. And he can say as much as he wants in speeches, but there's just a lot we don't know.
Yeah, that's always key, isn't it? Who your Chancellor is. We'll watch with interest. Listen, Peter, thank you. Back on air tonight, of course, Peter Cardwell, talk presenter, with us live in Downing Street. Which direction does Andy Burnham... I mean, he's not the Prime Minister yet, but he kind of... I mean, it's all bar, I don't know what could happen, an alien abduction. He's clearly going to be. Ian is down in London. Ian, what have you got for us? Hi.
Ian.
Hello.
Basically, everybody keeps saying, quite simply, what's Andy Burnham's thing? I'll tell you what, without doubt, you know what he's going to follow.
Yeah.
His thing is going to follow Corbyn. Because quite simply, in the last election was proved, the vote for Labour was less than it was for Corbyn, correct?
Yeah.
Right? So quite simply, he knows his policies are the ones that they want to follow. He knows that, and that is without doubt. I bet there's been phone calls already this morning to Corbyn, to Sultana, to all the ones that have left. Don't worry, boys and girls, you can come back. No problems, no questions asked. Like Julia had the guy that was quite good that he left on the principal, Carl, whatever his name is.
Turner.
He's already had the phone call to come back and he's going to accept it straight away. So that gives you an idea of what's going to happen. And that is going to be it. He's not going to suddenly become more friendly to Trump. If anything, he's going to go even more the opposite way because the voting is that way.
But what about... but is that within his own party or the wider country? Because part of the thinking, of course... But part of the thinking of getting Burnham in wasn't just about the fact that the Labour Party are having a torrid time of it, or the government are. It was about 2029, right? That Burnham is a man that can win against Nigel Farage, the obvious example, whereas Starmer isn't.
Unfortunately, the way it is at the present time, even with Farage, and I'm not a supporter of reform, quite truthfully, I'd rather stay with Kemi, right? But the right is so fragmented as well, they won't get a general... If they've had a general election tomorrow or in 6 months' time, try and make it, it will still be... They might be the biggest party, but they won't be able to form a government because they won't have enough seats. So Labour will get in because they'll pick up the Lib Dems, they'll pick up the Greens, they'll pick up the SNP, and that's the way that it is. So quite simply, he knows that he's got that in his back pocket. What he really wants to do is to stop the fragmentation of the Labour Party. So he will do everything where he realised with Starmer couldn't get any of the reforms he wanted to do.
Sure.
So quite simply, he will do absolutely squat diddly. Right? That is his manner. It's like that he said, he was one of the ones. There was Khan, him, and Starmer that backed for Corbyn to get in the election in the first place years ago, correct?
Yeah, but also you've got to remember Burnham was also a Blair man at one point. So, which one is he? I mean, he hasn't even started yet, and we're having this the same debate we had about Starmer. We know, who is he? What does he stand for? Do you think that the Corbyn thing is in his blood, or do you sense it's just the most politically savvy way for him to go, even if he doesn't fully believe it?
I think it's in his blood. It's in everything, but quite truthfully, he will do it. And he's definitely going to be in my own personal sort of thing, which is my hatred, if I had enough dosh, I'd be out tomorrow. Yeah. He's definitely going to make the Jews leave this country.
You think
Even
so?
More so. Yes.
Why would he do that?
Why? Because
he's been the mayor of Manchester. He's been very protective over issues around anti-Semitism.
No, because the police also, at the very start of it, before the shooting outside the synagogue there, I'd say Shul, right, there was problems going on with police with the thing, and it was always this sort of way with the Jews and the Manchester police. Well, right? There was also one other thing which you've got to remember. Yeah. The police in Manchester, where was them with the grooming gangs? Nowhere.
Well, I mean, all of these questions, these questions aren't going to go away. I mean, the fact that they're given a newfound life, and rightly so, if he becomes the Prime Minister, because he will be held to a different level of account now. Listen, Ian, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. We'll go to some messages as well. We're also going to be speaking to the political editor of the Daily Mail on this, and you too, 0344 499 1000. Are you having some kind of party? Are you going out for a beer as a result of Keir Starmer telling us this morning?
I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
Boo-hoo. Our lives are over, my child. There he was this morning on the steps of Number 10 about 9:30. Are you celebrating? Have you got a party organised? Is it a beer off round at the local with your mates? Are you combining it with England's next match tomorrow evening? So you've got a nice sort of hybrid of Starmer resignation and an England win? Well, hopefully. 0344 499 1000. If you are popping the corks and opening a tinny right now, we want to hear from you on that number. Lines are open. This is Talk.
What they're ashamed of is the English flag. Scottish flag, fine. Welsh flag, fine. Irish, everything like that's marvellous. But no. We can't be English. And this has been going on for a long, long time.
He would be Prime Minister of the most toxic political brand in the country at the moment, which is Labour. And that is what we will be battling against.
Our Prime Minister is allegedly attacked by another nation and nothing is said.
This is a reminder that Russia regards the United Kingdom as a hostile power.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Lots to get through, and some breaking news. David Lammy is taking Keir Starmer's place at the dispatch box this afternoon to give the G7 statement, despite being at the very same dispatch box for PMQs, while Starmer was at the G7. Kemi Badenoch is still responding for the opposition. The Tories are all over this, of course. Kemi is the only leader. This is what they say. Kemi is the only leader actually turning up to do their job. The PM has clearly given up. All that guff about national interest and priorities has gone out the window in less than 2 hours. Kemi will be the only one in the chamber showing any common sense, because there's none coming from Labour benches. But that is a Tory position. But they would say that, wouldn't they, I guess? Let's speak with Martin Beckford, policy editor at the Daily Mail. Good afternoon to you, Martin. I mean, you know, we knew this week something was going to happen. There was, you know, you'd get fairly good odds that it was going to happen this morning, and it did. Textbook style, all the usual words, you know, I've served my country, it's been an honour, but now I resign. And, of course, along comes Andy Burnham on the 9:34 from Manchester, arriving a few moments ago. I think he's in a black cab as we speak, going, one assumes, over to Westminster to be sworn in as a new Member of Parliament. I mean, I know things can happen pretty fast, but, I mean, even by our curious standards, Martin, of 7,000 Prime Ministers in the last half an hour, I mean, this is breathtaking speed. He wasn't even an MP on Thursday.
Well, he still isn't.
And still isn't an MP, and he's going to be the Prime Minister in 3 weeks.
I know. I'm glad you picked up on that, because I think it hasn't really been fully appreciated just how unusual this is.
Yeah.
If you look at the Tory Prime Ministers who were pushed out, they were sort of for fairly understandable reasons. They'd failed with Brexit or whatever, or in Rishi's case, lost the election. But in this case, Andy Burnham won a by-election and has just sort of decided that he's going to replace Keir Starmer as Labour leader, and no one has stopped him. And it really can't think of anything comparable to this. And he hasn't stood in a leadership election, so we really don't know what he stands for or what he's going to do. And he doesn't have any mandate other than being the new MP for Makerfield.
Indeed, and this rather curious and, if nothing else, very annoying King of the North tag, which, again, didn't exist half an hour ago, but suddenly. And I said at the beginning of the programme, Martin, if I was doing a general phone-in here and asking our listeners and viewers to come up with, you know, really good political minds of the last 20 years, whether they were leaders, whether they were in opposition, Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, whether they were in cabinet or not, I don't think any single person would have phoned in and said Andy Burnham. I don't think he would have made any kind of list in that respect. And yet here we are with this man, as you say, not officially, not signed into Westminster yet to be an MP, and about to become the Prime Minister. I mean, that's one hell of a journey. And, of course, he's been a Blairite and a Corbynite as well, just to throw in more confusion into the mix.
That's right, yes, and he did lose the Labour leadership twice, so it's not like even Labour MPs had a particularly positive view of him back then. He lost to Corbyn most recently, so you're entirely right. And there was a brief period, you may remember, during lockdowns when he sort of stood up to the government, and there's a famous clip of him sort of looking at his phone when he was told what the latest lockdown restrictions were going to be in. He was briefly popular then, but yes, as you say, it's not much of a mandate. At
the moment, he reminds me of Keir Starmer, strangely enough, and I say that.
They're incredibly similar.
Yes.
Incredibly similar. Even his hairstyle started to look a bit more like Starmer's.
Yes,
I mean, they're sort of middle-aged men, like to dress down, they're fond of their football and a pint, and that's what a lot of their likability is based on. And you'll remember that this time 2 years ago, people thought that Starmer, because of that, would be a good, relatable Prime Minister, and obviously it hasn't turned out that way.
Well, indeed, and of course there's a world of difference between being a former cabinet minister, even being a mayor of Greater Manchester as he was, and nobody disputes he's a nice bloke, but that's never the conversation we should be having. And yet, the difference between those positions and running the show, the chasm is so big, it ceases to even be almost a comparison that you could make. I mean, it's a big old job.
And definitely. And the other difference is that Keir Starmer had 4 years to prepare Labour for government, and as we saw, it turned out they hadn't got much of a plan other than to win the election. So, by contrast, Andy Burnham will have possibly 3 weeks to prepare for government.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting.
No team behind him.
And we, even those of us that do this for a living, Martin, we all still thought that in 2024, when Starmer came in, there was going to be sort of that Blair and Brown thing where they've been carving out their plans for years beforehand and working out, where the landmines were and where the bear traps lurked, and they knew what they were doing and they had a plan. Whether people agreed or disagreed with it, they came in with all guns blazing. And we sort of thought, well, Starmer he's obviously going to have something. He's been there, a few years in. And, of course, as it turned out, he came in with absolutely nothing at all. And we're likely to see almost this replayed in real time again.
Oh, that's highly likely, yes. I mean, Starmer was obviously, a highly competent lawyer, and he was DPP, so he obviously thought that being sort of sensible and following process and everything, and not being the chaotic Tories would suffice. But as everyone now knows, he has no political sense at all, and no vision and no allies, and that's what's done for him, really. So Burnham will obviously be thinking he can sell things better. He's a better communicator and has more of a political sense, so he'll probably bring Labour MPs along with him. But in terms of what he will actually do for the country, there's still a big questions.
Yeah, and he's not got a lot of, certainly fiscally, he's not got a lot of economically, a lot of wiggle room there, right? I mean, there's not a load of pots of money sitting around the back of Downing Street.
That's right. I mean, he will inherit exactly the same problems that Keir Starmer has had, and he will be left with this problem of how to fund defence spending, how to cut the welfare bill, what to do about North Sea oil drilling and the EU, all these big unanswered questions.
Could he go the other way, though? Could he go more in the Blairite thing? What would he have to do, Martin, for the Daily Mail to splash "The King is back" with a nice positive editorial about Andy Burnham arriving in Downing Street?
Well, I mean, a few people have tried to blame the media for Starmer's downfall, but it really hasn't been down to us. It's Labour MPs, and this will be so. If Burnham wanted to become a Blairite, he would have to get it past the Parliamentary Labour Party, not the Daily Mail. So that would be his first obstacle, which he would not clear, given that Starmer was with his huge majority, was unable to get even a very small cut to welfare through, and was forced to U-turn on pretty much everything else.
Absolutely spot on. Listen, Martin, great to have you on again. Good to see you too. Martin Beckford, policy editor at the Daily Mail. Thank you to him. Let's go to your calls. Maria in Gloucestershire. Maria, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Ian. I am so depressed.
Yeah.
Can't tell you how depressed I am. Yeah. All we've done is...
Was that just generally or to do with the news?
Labour Party. It's because of our friend Starmer leaving.
Were you happy that he's left, but sad of what's coming in? Because there's a lot of ways of looking at this.
Coming in. The Messiah. The Messiah.
Let's just all say it, and therefore he will be.
Yeah, he's going to save us. I haven't got a clue who he is. Yeah. I haven't got a clue what his fiscal policies are. I don't know what he's going to be doing. I mean, everybody thinks he's got... I mean, he's got until September to get all these things in place. What is he actually going to be doing? We might as well have kept Starmer.
There was one, I can't remember who it was, cabinet minister when Starmer first got into power, and I can't remember which department, big job in government, and, sat there at his big oak desk on day one with all these advisors around him from the civil service, and he sort of looked at them and went, what? And there's like, well, what are you going to do? What's your policy? And it's like, well, we don't know, really. And that happened in 2024. It could happen again, Maria. Do you think, can Andy Burnham win Labour the next election, though? Final question.
No.
It won't happen. Unequivocal stuff.
Can I just say quickly?
Yep.
I think we should, as people in this country, be able to say, we should have a general election.
And that is being echoed by certainly Nigel Farage and others at the moment. Maria, great call. Thank you for that. Let's get the news in 2.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Yes, it's a day. This is proper news day. Things are changing. Keir Starmer resigned as Labour leader, announcing from the steps of Downing Street that he is no longer best placed to lead the party into the next election. I have listened, he said. Nominations for his replacement open on the 9th of July. A new leader expected before Parliament returns in September. Smart Money, of course, says Andy Burnham, who's already confirmed he will stand to replace Starmer, with his path to number 10 already clearing as former Health Secretary. Wes Streeting abandoned his own leadership ambitions and threw his full weight behind the Makerfield MP within hours of Starmer's resignation speech. And someone else who was ahead of the game was Donald Trump, claiming vindication, having predicted Starmer's departure and blaming his downfall squarely on his failure to grip immigration and energy, with the US president saying simply that Starmer failed badly and wishing him well on his way out. I mean, he's certainly right on those two fundamental points. Labour MPs, of course, would maybe have a different take on things. 0344 499 1000. I find that a little interesting. What is it, if you're a Labour MP, what are you going to get from Andy Burnham that you didn't get from Keir Starmer? Because in terms of most of the policy stuff, like workers' rights bill, property landlords, issues around taxation, all of that stuff, breakfast clubs, remember those? All of that, I mean, those boxes are well and truly ticked. So what is Andy Burnham going to bring you that Keir Starmer didn't bring, if you're a Labour MP? Other than the fact that, sort of visually and articulation, Burnham might be a better choice to win a general election because he's got a northern accent and supports Everton. Is that it? I mean, Starmer had a kind of Surrey accent and supports Arsenal. I don't know where you go with that. 0344 499 1000. He has arrived, by the way. He's arrived and on his way to Westminster. The BBC managed to collar him, Mr Burnham, as he arrived at Euston Station. Let's have a look.
I made my statement, obviously praising the Prime Minister's dedication, service, and confirmed that I will put myself forward in the process that will soon be underway.
When Rishi Sunak did that and he became Prime Minister, you called for a general election. Would you be looking to do the same?
I think you're jumping several hurdles ahead there. My priority today is to become sworn in as the Mayor, as the MP for Makerfield.
Entirely fair question, isn't it? And that had been his previous position. David Maddox is political editor at The Independent. We see this play out a lot, don't we, David, when, things that people say when it happens to another party is very different when it happens to them. And that was a perfectly legit question from the BBC. When Rishi Sunak did that, you said there should be a general election. Well, surely, based on his own logic, there should be one now.
Absolutely. I think... I've heard so many Labour politicians over the last 10 years say we need another general election when the 5 previous Tory Prime Ministers resigned, and 4 of them, at least, was kicked out by the actual voters in the proper general election. He's the only one in the last 6 for that to happen. Home Office Minister, the Labour MP for Dover and Deal, Mike Camp, has been making this point. Very strongly. He's written for us actually on it, saying there ought to be a law forcing a general election in these circumstances. And I'm beginning to think that people will have some sympathy in that, the way we're chopping and changing Prime Minister.
Yeah, indeed. I was just musing, David, what do forget what other members of the public think or people who support different parties. What do Labour MPs, just bog standard, centre ground Labour MPs who wanted workers' rights bill to go through, they wanted the renters' rights bill to go through, they wanted waiting lists to be seriously addressed. All of that, they could argue, has happened under Starmer. What are they going to get different from Andy Burnham?
I think the main thing is that they think Burnham is a winner. They look at the polling and they see that he's doing well in the polling, that he's actually got a positive rating.
Yeah.
They look at their own performance under Keir Starmer. You know, it's been sub 20 points for quite some time. The whole thing's been a mess, you know, in terms of decision making and U-turns and all the rest of it. They don't seem to be making any kind of ground against Nigel Farage and reform. And then, you know, Andy Burnham gives Nigel Farage and reform an absolute kicking last week when it was supposed to be close. And that's what they see. But they also see somebody who can give a positive message, can actually warm people's hearts, not seen as purely robotic. And, you know, the presentation is very important to them.
It's interesting that the smart money seems to suggest, David, nobody is going to stand against Andy Burnham. I mean, the Prime Minister could, but I doubt that very much. So, 9th of July, the potential to put your name in the ring has gone. That just leaves Andy Burnham then. When does he become Prime Minister? The 10th of July?
I would have thought he becomes Prime Minister on the 9th. You know, we'll have the Council of the Guard. We'll have Keir Starmer leaving Downing Street and Andy Burnham rolling up into Downing Street with his team. I mean, he's been given 17 days to get his act together and get his team together, but that's basically it. As soon as West Streeting said, I'm not going to run, I'm going to back Andy Burnham. Yeah. And by the way, we broke the story over the weekend that was trying to do a deal. I think West Streeting may end up as Chancellor to ease his way in. And
did you say, sorry, I missed you there. Did you say Chancellor?
I mean, it's a good chance. Yeah, that's what he was looking for. I mean, whether he's got Chancellor is another thing, but he's got plum cabinet job for, you know, performing on his sword.
Yeah, well, 100%. Listen, David, sadly your line has slightly got the better of us. Maybe it's this slightly heated up weather, but thank you anyway. David Maddox, political editor at The Independent. That's interesting. Wes Streeting as Chancellor. I tend to think, although this would be proved wrong if you went back over several chancellors. We've had many more chancellors than we've had prime ministers, and we've had quite a lot of prime ministers. So that's also not a part of the story that gets the exposure that it should do, because that's really key. I tend to think the Chancellor should come with some kind of obvious fiscal business-like experience to that position. Wes Streeting is seen as somebody who's not a mad lefty of the Labour Party, and he's largely carved out some popularity with people outside of the Labour Party, but allowing for all of that. I mean, certainly he took on the, you know, junior doctors and the like in a way that previous health secretaries didn't. So, yeah, he's got that, but Chancellor, is he up there for that position? I mean, it's the second highest office in the land. You tell me. Just thank God. I mean, anyone but Ed Miliband, right? Nathan is in Darlington. What are you making of it all, Nathan? Afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian. Afternoon. Well, I'm currently stood in B&Q. I'm buying myself a brand new barbecue because we're celebrating the departure of Keir Starmer.
There it is. Fantastic. You're buying a barbecue. Fantastic. I love it.
I've been thinking about a barbecue, but that this morning has just tipped it right over the edge.
So was it the moment when you heard these words?
I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
That was it. Gone.
Honestly, Ian, it was bliss. I run a business in Darlington, and I've been absolutely, since that bloke took office, it's just been horrendous.
Is it a bit of a double-edged sword, though? Because, of course, it's not the end of the Labour government. In fact, some are saying it's the start of a real Labour government.
Yeah, well, there is that, but it's the uncertainty.
Yeah.
People just have a constant uncertainty of what's going on. You know, they don't know what he's going to U-turn on next. What's he going to do next? It's just it's a nightmare, Ian.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, as you know, as running a small business, you need stability, direction. You need to think
Absolutely.
Your government have your back as well, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. And Starmer he hasn't had our back at all. He's in a whole other world to what us normal people live in.
Well, he genuinely thought, I honestly think he thought that just by not being a Conservative, that was enough to be...
That would do it.
That would do, You know, he'd ran a high office in the legal department as Director of Public Prosecutions, so no one doubts he's a, educated bloke who's, knows his way around, a common-sense argument, you'd like to think, if you're a lawyer. But that isn't... You've got to have an underpinning of direction. I mean, you've got to have you couldn't run a business without an idea where it's going.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. And it's been like running a business blind since Labour took over, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
From one week to the next, you don't know what's going to happen.
Sure, yeah.
It's been absolutely crazy.
This Andy Burnham fella, any thoughts that you think, is he going to change the vibe, the feeling?
Oh, he's definitely going to change the vibe. I hope he gets in and calls a general election. We need reform in power.
I mean, that would be extraordinary, wouldn't it? If he literally, because we just played that clip, I don't know if you heard it, but when Rishi Sunak took over as Prime Minister, Andy Burnham was one of the ones saying there should be a general election. I mean, he should be held to that.
We never voted for Andy, We never voted for it. We want someone in office that we all want and vote for.
I mean, wouldn't that be extraordinary if, if July the 9th we got an announcement there's going to be a general election?
Can you imagine, Ian? Can you imagine?
That would be extraordinary. Nathan, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that, Nathan in Darlington. Good luck with the business as well. And the barbecue. He's out celebrating. This one from Cliff in Berkshire. Afternoon, Ian. Starmer said every decision I've taken has been to put the country I love first. Starmer, I think you'll find the EU is not a country, mate. Great point. Mark, down in London. What have you got, Mark? Afternoon.
Yeah, afternoon, Ian. I was just saying, when you look at Starmer, he looks like a clean-cut bloke, nice family, likes his football. But when you go back and you look at what led up to him coming to where he is now, he stood shoulder to shoulder with Jeremy Corbyn. One of the biggest anti-Semites in the Labour Party. Never met a terrorist he didn't like. He brought massive shame on the Labour Party. I think they were referred to the Commission for Racial Equality at one point, something like that anyway.
Possibly.
Then when he didn't suit him, he just threw him under a bus, said, dusted himself off and went, don't worry about that, don't look at that anymore. I'm going to be the Prime Minister now. And then, he said, there's going to be adults in the room and there'll be smashing boats and things. And when he came in, we had, all the bungs, that soon got forgotten. Then Sue Gray left. Then you had Louise Haigh. You had all the Epstein stuff. Tulip Sadiq.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably more than I can think of.
Quite a big old list.
Rayner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all these people. And now you've got, obviously with the Epstein thing, there were messages disappeared, phones got lost. I mean, what is the matter with these MPs? I mean, you've been around MPs long enough. When you go back into history and you look at some of the speeches and some of the things that some of our older MPs used to say, and these people they're just minions compared to them, aren't they?
God, just a bit. Yeah.
I don't know how these people ever get...
I think to so many of them, Mark, it's just a career, isn't it? It's a nice career. It comes with a good old pension, and especially if you're in a safe seat, you're home and dry for the next 20 years. You build up a good pension, you can usually go off and get a job as a result of your time being an MP. So, what's not to like? It's the bit in the middle, looking after your constituents, that becomes the tougher bit. Great call, Mark. Thank you, mate, for that. 0344 499 1000. Where does it leave? Where does Keir Starmer go next? Somebody mentioned Larry the cat. Larry the cat. Is Starmer going to take Larry with him? Will he be the first Prime Minister to nick the cat? Or will the cat simply keel over with one more son of a toolmaker anecdote? It could be that. Burnham has Burnham got an allergy to cats? I don't know. We'll find out all of this detail in the coming weeks. It's not going to be dull. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
What they're ashamed of is the English flag. Scottish flag, fine. Welsh flag, fine. Irish, everything like that's marvellous. But no. We can't be English. And this has been going on for a long, long time.
He would be Prime Minister of the most toxic political brand in the country at the moment, which is Labour. And that is what we will be battling against.
Our Prime Minister is allegedly attacked by another nation and nothing is said.
This is a reminder that Russia regards the United Kingdom as a hostile power.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. This comes from Jan the Man from Blackburn. He says, I've not voted Labour since 2001, the first post-uni election. As you do, I guess. However, I always want our government to do the best it can in the interest of the country. That's true. We should always have, even if we pathologically hate the people in charge, we should want them to succeed. With the initial joy of two-tier angling for his inevitable EU role turning to reality, I believe only Al Khan's as Prime Minister, John Healey as his right-hand man, Carl Turner in a prominent post-leadership can put the country back on track and have any chance of getting the electorate back on side before 2029. Jan, great. That's a great analysis as well. So that would suggest, of course, that you'd have to have Al Khan's or somebody else put themselves up against Andy Burnham. And, of course, the smart money would say, good luck with that. Let's get a word from Jonathan Gullis. Now, Councillor Jonathan Gullis, leader of Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Council. Jonathan, good to have you with us. You've been a Tory, you're now Reform. I know your leader has called for a general election, I would guess. You will pretty much concur with that. Nice to see you.
Well, good to see you too, my friend. And look, absolutely up for a general election. And I'm not just saying that because we in Reform are absolutely up for the fight. But Andy Burnham's own words, his own tweets, said that when there was a leadership change under the last Conservative government that we should have a general election. So if we are to be consistent, then let's make sure that he does what he says. Let's be honest, Andy. You want it, let's have it.
Yeah. He arrived at Euston Station, didn't say very much. He was challenged on that question, curiously, by the BBC. Journalistically, they decided to get out of bed this morning and actually ask the straightforward question. I think it's... I can't see how Burnham consistently can find a way out of that one when he literally called for a general election based on what he saw as an inauthentic move to put Rishi Sunak into Downing Street. To be fair, he's also not ruled it out, so he might surprise us, Jonathan, but I'm not about to put a bet on that.
No, I agree with you. I wouldn't put a belt in it either. But I think it'd be the smart move for him, because the reality is he's never going to have a higher point than he has got right now.
Yes.
He's walking in to a situation where many of Labour MPs, Labour Party members, even certain members of the general public are pinning their hopes and expectations of what they think an Andy Burnham premiership will look like. We're about to see that come into contact with reality, particularly when it comes to his first budget. And the reality is, he's not going to make the transformative changes to welfare that need to be made. No. He's going to be what I think the word creative has been banded around, whatever that means. He's got to find at least 15 billion as a minimum to boost defence spending, so John Healey could be satisfied that we're taking defence seriously as a nation. He says he wants to have the largest house building programme since the Second World War. He said he wanted to give the WASPy women their money, then quickly U-turned after he was caught at a hustings in Makerfield making that pledge. He wants to bring back HS2 between Birmingham and Manchester. The reality is, where's all this money coming from? The reality is that the things he was promising are not going to happen. And when that is found out, as it will be in the next 6 months, the public are going to have a very negative view on him. In fact, we saw over the course of the by-election his net favourability dropping over the course of that by-election because of the numerous U-turns on what he said as mayor and what he was saying as a parliamentary candidate. And so if he was The smart money would suggest he should call an election and he can run off the vibes. But the reality is he'll convince himself he could turn things around. Reality will then come into contact with him. And ultimately, the Labour Party brand is so toxic and so damaged that even Andy Burnham can't save it.
It's interesting. He's in many ways, he's gone further than some rather extravagant spending pledges, because he talked a lot about deconstructing or even dismantling 40 years of neoliberalism, as he called it. So he was talking about Thatcher, conveniently missed out the previous years of the Labour government before Thatcher, which was an utter disaster for students of history. You would know. Before our time, I can safely say, in terms of full knowledge, Jonathan, but you take the point. And Blairism and all the stuff he's endorsed over the years and campaigned for. He's talking about we've got to recalibrate, rewire the entire system. I don't really know. I mean, it's a great platitude, if you like, but that's all it is, surely. I mean, what's he going to do?
Well, this is the point, Ian, right? We've had Andy Burnham's team briefing out that they want to come in September. Now, they want to come in September because they want to have time to get ready. Yeah. What on earth has Andy Burnham been doing for the last, quite frankly, obviously, year, apart from undermining the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, if he's not been using that time to prepare? When he was rejected from standing in Gorse Denton, did he not use that time to start preparing for government, to think about who he would hire, the type of legislation he wants to draft, the type of raising the funds that he needs in order to bring in those staff early on so they can start getting things ready to go? The fact he's been relying on Ed Miliband to loan him staff who he himself is now hiring into his campaign team, just goes to show that this is a man who is ill-equipped and ill-prepared to come into government. And the last person we saw do that was Sir Keir Starmer, who sacked his chief of staff, Sue Gray, who apparently has been advising Andy Burnham for not having a plan ready in place. We know how this story ends, Ian. I literally saw it firsthand when I was a Conservative MP in the Conservative Party. Rishi Sunak came in, he tried to take over a toxic brand, he tried to steady the ship. It all went one way, which was down the drain. I wonder, you've just sort of sown a seed of something I hadn't really thought about, Jonathan, because there's all this talk that he will go unchallenged and there won't be anyone. But is it possible that a Burnhamite would put their name in the ring for no other reason than to give him that 3 months that he would need if there was a contest? Well, look, maybe that does happen, because at the moment I think Keir Starmer's played quite a clever hand of saying, you wanted me gone, buddy? You wanted to usurp me, you wanted to undermine me, you got all those treacherous Labour MPs to stick the knife in my back. Well, guess what? I'll hand you the keys as soon as possible. So there might well be some random moves just to deliberately give Andy Burnham the time that he's desiring. But look, I would be shocked, because 81 MPs, I suspect, is the threshold. I would be shocked if there's some 81 MPs who are up for that kind of game. I think most of them want to convince themselves that this orderly transition's a real thing. Again, there's nothing orderly about changing the government, changing the Prime Minister, changing the Cabinet, changing the ministers, changing the Labour Party internally and the staff that will come with it, changing the direction of travel. And then whilst also claiming you won't change the fiscal rules, you won't undermine the immigration changes Burnham Mahmood wants to make. I mean, it's just, there's such a mess, a concoction. So many Labour MPs are going to be disappointed. The Blairites will be unhappy because he'll probably borrow. The soft left will be unhappy because he won't go hard on net zero, is in doubling down, and he won't undo the immigration changes Shabana Mahmood is bringing forward. So the unruly PLP will continue to be unruly. I mean, the fact Clive Lewis, who was willing to give up his Norwich seat, has already said that he's disappointed by the U-turns and basically said that he thinks he's a failure. I mean, this is the reality they're living in. Again, Labour MPs, I'm telling you this from lived experience. I've been there, I've seen it, I know how it ends.
Jonathan, great to have you on with us. Good luck in the new gig from your own perspective as well. Thank you to Jonathan Gullis, former Conservative MP, now Reform councillor, leader of Newcastle Underline Borough Council. Thank you to him. One in from Barry. Afternoon, Ian. Those of us that wish to can take a few days to celebrate the resignation of the worst Prime Minister in history. However, nothing has really changed. We still reside in an anti-British state, says Barry. There is that feeling. Mark in Norfolk says, Ian, a new barbecue. Now Starmer grows the economy. That's a good point, actually. Well, there could be a big run on beer and champagne, or Prosecco, as it is now. Beer, Prosecco and barbecues could just sell out. In the air conditioning units could sell out in the next week. Starmer leaves on a high, saying the economy has never been so buoyant, down to solely those things. Paul is in Newport. What have you got for us, Paul? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Ian. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good as gold at this end. What's happening?
You're a good man. I was just saying to your colleague there, I think I've been listening to you all day, obviously, because I'm avid talk listener, but anyway, and I hear all these people coming on, and it might be political commentators, it might be other MPs or whatever. I honestly feel they're missing the point, okay? And the point is this. The days of people, voters, blindly following a colour are gone. We're now listening, more and more of us are listening intently to what people say. And if you say it and then don't do it, we don't like it.
Yeah.
Whereas before we'd say, oh, no, the Labour will do this or Conservative will do that. I honestly believe that the rise of reform is absolutely down to the fact that Nigel says things that connect with most people, okay? We hope blindly that if he does get in, he can actually do what he says he wants to do. And every time we hear a story, I don't know if you read the other day, there was a story about, I think it was last year, we had 1,400 migrants came in from Europe.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy. There was one
We had some from America as well.
We did, but there was
Bizarrely.
a Spanish guy. It was a Spanish guy. No disrespect to anyone. I'm just relating the tale. The Spanish guy, okay? And as we all know, Spanish youth unemployment's running about 40% or something. It's crazy over there. But anyway, so he sort of came over here and said, look, I've changed my religion to Muslim and I'm gay. And I'm not very comfortable in Spain. So, although we all go on holiday to Spain. But anyway, so he came over here. We gave him a house and like a reported 250 quid. The rumour was that he took the £250, went back to Spain, because that's just going straight into his bank account, and then sublet the house we gave him.
Wow. Yeah, that comes under the category of that's not okay. I mean, I don't want, as you rightly say, whether there's truth in it, but it's the kind of thing that has been happening, the abuse of the system in so many different ways. And that's what Burnham has got to get his... I mean, if you take migration, is it in Burnham's DNA any more than it was in Starmer's DNA to sort this out, Paul?
I don't believe it is. If I'm being totally candid, I mean, it was someone said earlier on. They said, "Yeah, I look to the future." Famous words. I look to the future, and I don't like what I see.
Yeah.
I've said this to you before, Ian. I worry about the future of this country because I see the problem now is so big. It's so big. I don't know how we'd resolve it. There are so many issues of such magnitude.
Well, yeah, and I don't, because the difficulty here is that if the polls are correct, when Andy Burnham comes in, there'll be a little bit of a bounce because a new leader and new Labour people that were thinking of going elsewhere might return to Labour. But at the moment, the smart money says Reform would be the biggest party at an election. So you'd have to then start again. So we then move on to Prime Minister number 9 or 10. And you've got to have at least 2 terms to put anything into place. But that takes us from 2010 or 2008 when it all went pear-shaped with the financial crisis. We've never recovered.
In previous conversations, we had a discussion that made steam. I manage a small business here, as you know, okay, and my business rates have gone, in the last 3 years, they've gone from 23,000 a year to 45,000 a year.
Unbelievable.
To 66,000 a year. Yeah. Right? So it's gone up by over £40,000 in that short period of time. Now, to make that money, because you only pay that from your profits, I've got to turn over an additional 300,000 plus. Okay? Now, I can't do that. That's physically impossible for me to do. But Andy Burnham, when you look, we all do this now, we look back at his track record. What did he say about this? What did he say about that? And he's actually wanting to reform business rates. Okay? Well, let's wait and see then.
Yeah, and what does that look like? Because the reform, the trouble is when they raise a tax, is it very rarely goes backwards, does it? I mean, sometimes it doesn't go up anymore, but they don't ever go... No one's going to come in and go, I'll tell you what we're going to do, Paul, we're going to pop your business rates back to what they were 6 years ago.
Yeah, no, it won't happen, because they can't afford to lose the money.
Indeed, once they've got used to having the money, then, the idea of retracting on that... I mean, you don't need to be an expert in economics or business to understand the ridiculousness of your story with business rates, and you're one of many, of course, many thousands.
100%. But the problem is, of course, because we're bright people, well, that's you and me. I'm only talking to you and me here.
Yeah, obviously.
But we know. So let's say he wanted to do that, okay? And we've spoken, another thing we've spoken about, I mean, again, I'm convinced that within the next 20 years, the state pension will be means tested. Right? So if you've got a private pension that's going to pay you 25 grand, your state pension won't be full, it'll be like 75%. And it'll just be blah, blah, blah. So you may find that by pure smoke and mirrors, they'll say, oh, yeah, we're going to reduce business rates. And then just sort of following up behind that to pay for it.
Yeah.
But what we're going to do is we've now into state, sort of means-tested state pension.
Yeah.
And we know it's coming. We just know it's coming.
Well, you're right, because they can't carry on as it is. But, of course, that's a pension pot we've all paid into, which is controversial in itself. Paul, I've got to move, but great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. Little bit of breaking news. Former DUP leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson has been found guilty at Newry Crown Court of 18 historical sex offences against 2 women when they were children, including 1 count of rape, 13 of indecent assault and 4 of gross indecency. Lady Eleanor Donaldson, the wife of Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, has been found to have committed the acts relating to offences of aiding and abetting over those historical sex offences following the trial of the facts at Newry Crown Court. More on that as we get it. And, of course, more to you. We're going to cross to the House of Commons now. Andy Burnham is about to be sworn in. If you're looking at the moving pictures there, you will see the usual choreography, how this is played out in the House of Commons. Let's have a listen in to what is happening.
So that I can serve the people of Arbroath and Broughty Ferry. My first allegiance is, and always will be, the sovereign people of Scotland. I do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to the law, so help me God.
So that is this is obviously the moment when we have one new MP who's just been sworn in. There are 3 in total, because there were 2 by-elections, of course, last week in Aberdeen. The Tories came away victorious. The SNP nicked the other one, and Andy Burnham the other one. So that's how it all worked out. She's now signing the official book. That takes place just at the corner there by the Speaker's chair. Quick handshake for the Speaker as she makes her way out. And that's Lara Bird. I think I'm right in saying these are new faces on the political scene, of course, so bear with me. Lara Bird being sworn in and talking to Lindsay Hoyle on her way out. She's the SNP winner from last week.
Member for Aberdeen South.
Yeah. And this is the Tory coming through now. And as she walks towards the orb and the sceptre, a little nod to the House. I'm ready for the procedure where he will be, I beg your pardon, he will be signed in as
King Charles,
MP. This is Douglas Lumsden.
According to law, so help me God.
And away he goes. It's the same deal. He signs along the dotted line. Yes, I will do everything I'm told to do, and I'll behave myself. You won't see any shenanigans in the Strangers Bar. You'll never read about me in a tabloid, and I've got no free gear coming my way. So he signs the book, not with a quill, but with a good old biro, by the looks of things. And then he'll have a little handshake with the Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle. Well, one assumes he will have a little handshake with the Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, as he finishes the official bit of signing himself. It must be a very strange experience. It's not a workplace like any other, really. You're there to represent your constituents and your party. Congratulations, says Mr. Hoyle, and away he goes. And then we move to the new member for Makerfield, I should say, who is Andy Burnham. He'll be the next one making his way through the door. Usual choreography, and we'll listen in to this.
We now come to Andy Burnham, member for Makerfield.
Rome is saved.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
He's suited up like a good one there. Big rouse of endorsement, I think we can say, from the Labour benches. A little bit of gentle and polite heckling from the other benches. I hope to God he hasn't got those flipping sandals on. That would be grim, wouldn't it? Nice suit. Signing along the dotted line, of course, there's a couple of elements of paperwork that you sign in that little procedure. There he goes. And he's off to shake the hand of Lindsay. Well, that officially makes Andy Burnham the Prime Minister. And, of course, he has already made it known that he will be putting his hat into any leadership challenge. And if he doesn't get it challenged by anyone else, he essentially becomes the next Prime Minister, even though he said that's a process that shouldn't happen. It's next month. It's weeks away, 9th. If nobody challenges him by the 9th of July, a week or so later, he can become the Prime Minister. So, less than a week ago, he wasn't an MP. In a couple of weeks' time, he'll be the Prime Minister. Now, you could say, well, that's beautiful and democratic. What a system we have. They don't have that in North Korea. You could turn that on its head and go, well, it's a bit light, it's a bit weird, isn't it? To just become the Prime Minister like that? Well, anybody could. If somebody else had won Makerfield, then they would be might not be the Prime Minister, but they'd be certainly standing there today in the House of Commons getting signed in. 0344 499 1000. I've lost track of whether we've been to a break or not. Yeah, have we got a break to do now? We have got a break to do now. 20 to 3, this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
We have returned. There's so much happening. This comes from Paul, who says, how can you trust a man who dyes his hair? Paul in a very warm Rhodes. Not road, Rhodes, as in the island, I'm assuming. Yes, there is something about that. There's quite a lot of it going on in politics, the hair dye. An awful lot of it going on. And it's often, if you notice, it's often out the same packet. There's a sort of uniform colour that seems to exist. There is some grey in Andy Burnham's hair, I have to say. I'm willing to be convinced that maybe he's just hung on to his true colour. But I don't know. Pav is in Harrow. Fire away, Pav. What have you got for us? Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Well, it's pretty much about what you've been talking about, to be honest.
Yeah.
The ironic/amusing thing. I mean, I spoke to you about this before the election and suggested that he wouldn't last until Christmas 2026. And fortunately, I've been proven right. On to the main issue. Even in his valedictory speech, Ian, the cynicism, the hyperbole, the damn right lies, but most thing, and above all, the same guy was saying, I am going to stand and fight. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, he was sending people out. And he's capitulated quicker than, anything would have you believe. And yet another U-turn. So this is the problem. And you know my background's history, and I make a point of suggesting that the Earl of Rosebery is the worst Prime Minister we've ever had for all sorts of reasons, albeit Gordon Brown, Theresa May in recent years have run him close. But, and I said this to you at the time, the problem that you had with this guy, and I thought he was always going to fare, was whatever vision you have, whether it's a left-wing commie version like him or something more centre-right, the point is the Prime Minister, albeit we don't live in a presidential system, should have a vision for the country. Now, we can hate it, we can, completely endorse it, or probably somewhere in between, and then we can argue the toss, so to speak.
Yep.
This guy never, ever, ever had a vision of any description. And all he seemed to be doing was he was trying to balance his very parochial and myopic support in the centre sort of right of the party with the obvious detractors in the left wing, whether it was the Corbynites or something slightly right to them, if that's even a thing. And once that basis of support then erodes from the centre right, we saw it eroding not just with the whole Mandelson saga and the way that he came across. And by the way, on that note, I suspect and surmise that we will get plenty of more damning things now released now that he won't be in office. But even with the left, there was just nothing. There was no leadership. There was no personality. There was no conviction. On top of that, all the U-turn. What exactly, and this is what really irks me about the narrative in certain parts of the media and commentators, they're calling him an honourable man. Well, sorry, the last time I checked honourable, it wasn't someone who sacrificed anybody to save his own job. It wasn't someone who completely shifted the blame and accountability to everybody but himself. Honourable generally is what the term actually means, rather than this ridiculous contrived narrative that people suggest that this man was honourable. Well, I'm yet to see it. And
He's been putting... Otherwise. Did you not notice, Pav? He's been putting country before party.
Yeah, that was the funniest thing, because I was convinced he was then going to say, and by the way, I'm a Chagos Island citizen or a Mauritian or whatever, because that particular line, honestly, was just, it was wholly unpalatable. Moving on to Burnham. On the one hand, we should be happy because we've got rid of this absolute automaton and charlatan, as just saying to face, frankly, on all sorts of levels. And we've got to give him a chance, albeit I suspect that as soon as he brings the likes of Louise Hay and Rayner and the rest of the left-wing sixth-form politics mob in, we're going to see their direction of travel. God only knows if, by the way, Ed Miliband becomes Chancellor. I might even emigrate to Dubai myself. Yeah. But that aside, the reality of the situation is people, and again, parts of the media, king of the North rubbish. Well, you can talk about him in Manchester, correct. You can talk about him in Liverpool. So at best, he's king of the Northwest, or king. He's not king of the North, if for argument's sake.
Yeah, so if you want to be literal about it, king of the North is quite a wide accolade to give somebody.
But what has he actually done? And I implore people who don't know. In his term in under the government, his term in government when he was there, he did absolutely. If he thinks giving free bus passes to pensioners is going to turn around and, endorse him to the rest of the country, well, he only needs to look across the pond to the likes of DeSantis and co., who have done far more within their locality than he ever has. And if he thinks it's just going to be a walk in the park, he has got another thing coming. In a nutshell, I'll leave you on this note. You just said, and other people said, and I think Julia said this earlier, that, what are we going to get with him? We're just going to get a slightly more personable, Cambridge educated, not Oxford, because, of course, Starmer didn't go to Oxford, contrary to the media myth. He spent a year there. A slightly more educated, probably more intelligent, personable chap who's still going to essentially say, well, when there's a fire, draw a picture of water and pretend it goes out. I'm afraid if you don't know what women are, Ian, you can't run the country, and that is a matter of fact.
Yeah, it's a great point, great crescendo to finish on. Pav, thank you. Pav in Harrow, thanking him. Let's speak with Ryan Saby, economics editor at The Sun, joins us live from Parliament. A lot of talk, obviously, Ryan, of what's happening there at the moment. Andy Burnham, he's just been sworn in as an MP. And, of course, while everybody's talking about the new leader and who it might be, it is worth looking at what, in many respects, is an equally big story. Some would even say a bigger story, and that's who the heck his Chancellor's going to be, because that's absolutely key to establish the direction or the vibe that Mr Burnham is coming from, and key to the markets and stability and what the next few years looks like.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think one of the key things that he'll be looking at is how the new Chancellor will try and calm those markets. There's been lots of speculation over the weekend that one name in the frame could be Ed Miliband, but there's been sort of an adverse reaction to that. So I think that the sort of names that are now being bandied around is the Wes Streetings, Pat McFadden's. One name that was also being touted was Shabana Mahmood, but it now looks like she'll be staying at the Home Office. So I think you'll be looking at someone from maybe the sort of, not the soft left, but maybe on the sort of right side of the Labour Party. And I think someone like Wes Streeting, who has just given his backing to Andy Burnham, you just wonder where that leads.
it's always interesting, and you've covered it for years as well, Ryan. When somebody gets a job, you know, they very rarely give the, you know, if there's a doctor in the, a medical doctor very rarely gets the job of health secretary. A farmer almost never becomes agriculture secretary, although once in a while a clown does become the culture secretary, but that's a whole other story. But you take my point. We don't always look for the a historic CV in those areas. But I always think with the job of Chancellor, you need a little bit of business somewhere. I know Rachel Reeves got into trouble with a slightly embellished or incorrect chronology of her CV when it comes to that. But we can safely say Wes Streeting is not an economist. He's never worked in a bank, and as far as I know, knows very little about that side of life. And I don't say that as an insult, just a general fact. Does it matter?
Yeah, no. I think it does to an extent. I think you want someone with a decent grounding in economics. You want someone ideally who's spent a lot of time in business as well, because I think it's good to understand how all sorts of business works, whether it's multinational companies in the city or a small business or a one-man band sort of building operation running up and down the country. So I think it's good to understand how the whole, you know, the economic picture, the business picture works. But this is, you speak to anyone who's tried to put together a cabinet over the years, sometimes it's like putting a jigsaw together. Everything just has to fit. Some people may not want to, be in a certain position in a certain department because they just don't quite get it. And I just wonder whether Andy Burnham has got to bring the whole party together. And that is why he may give a top job like the Chancellor to someone like Wes Streeting.
What is the word on the street, as it were, Ryan, in terms of the sort of government he's going to form? We know that he's sort of flip-flopped a little bit over the years, Andy Burnham. He's been a Blairite, he's been a Corbynite. We didn't really perhaps need to know when you're the mayor of a big city like Greater Manchester, similarly with that of London. Yeah, there's certain sort of managerial tick boxes that you've got to attend to, regardless of who you are. You've got to run the trams, you've got to run the buses, etc. But in terms of the wider question of who is Andy Burnham, I mean, where do we go with that? I genuinely don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the big thing about what we're going to have to look at over the next month or so. But if we take almost sort of kind of a face value that there won't be a leadership contest. Now he's spoken about bringing some utilities under more public ownership, whether that's water, energy, and rail. But how much will that cost? He's spoken quite tough on immigration in recent weeks, and particularly at his one of his acceptance rally that he did on Friday morning. So the whole sort of basis of the Andy Burnham government will be quite interesting to see. But he hasn't got much time to work it all out, and I think that he would have preferred possibly coming into Downing Street, if he is the leader, which we expect, at the beginning of September, just to give himself and his team more time to plan. Now, they could be in Downing Street by the 17th, 18th of July. You compare that to the last Labour government. They had, the best part of 4 or 5 years to bring together a MAC programme for government. Kemi Badenoch has spent the best part of 2 years trying to sort of work up, again, her programme for government, and she would probably admit that she's not there. So coming up with a big, detailed plan
in a
month, exactly, is a really tall order.
Yeah, big time. And of course, he's got to do this quickly, because, I mean, unless, of course, the unthinkable happens, Ryan, because he was challenged on this a little earlier about calling a general election. He'd previously criticised Rishi Sunak being appointed without a general election and said there should be a general election. Look, these things are very rarely consistent, so I'm assuming that's off the agenda. But, I mean, based on his own words, who knows?
Yeah, I think who knows, but I think the harsh reality is that there won't be a quick or snap general election. I think mainly because a lot of his MPs know that they will lose their seat. If you're going to go to the country, you want to be, in a confident position. I think he'd want to give himself, a couple of years just to build up that programme and show that he has delivered change or made some difference to people's lives, and doing that so quickly. It's all very well and good winning a by-election in one part of the country where you're extremely popular. Doing it in the rest of the country where you may be less so is a completely different matter.
Absolutely bang on. Ryan, enjoy the rest of the afternoon over there at Westminster. Thank you, Ryan Saby, economics editor at The Sun. I think talking to us from the roof of Westminster by the looks of things. It's hot up there. Thank you to him. More from you on the way. This is Talk.
What they're ashamed of is the English flag. Scottish flag, fine. Welsh flag, fine. Irish, everything like that's marvellous. But no. We can't be English. And this has been going on for a long, long time.
He would be Prime Minister of the most toxic political brand in the country at the moment, which is Labour. And that is what we will be battling against.
Our Prime Minister is allegedly attacked by another nation and nothing is said.
This is a reminder that Russia regards the United Kingdom as a hostile power.
The question my party is asking now is whether I am best placed to lead us into the next general election. I have heard the answer of my parliamentary party to that question, and I accept that answer with good grace. Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
Well, you know what? In the end, he did do the right thing, and there were some achievements, and he's an honourable man, and he cared about public service. Guys, that's not what happened just now. In the last half an hour, Keir Starmer resigned, and he resigned because he was pushed. Most of his issues, most of the things which have damned him from, let's face it, within days, within weeks of him becoming Prime Minister back in July 2024, or of his own making. They were things he chose to do, cutting the winter fuel allowance, damning everybody who wanted to have a public inquiry on the grooming gangs as jumping onto the far-right bandwagon, the two-tier policing after the Southport riots. This man brought it on himself. He was not a good Prime Minister.
There was two things on that manifesto. One was a picture of Keir Starmer and the word change. Well, promise made and promise delivered.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to David Ashbury as well. He says, cheers, Keir Starmer. Best news I've heard in 2 years. And he's dropped a little photo attachment there of what looks like a can of Stella. He's having a pint to celebrate. Well done, Dave. Good man. Let's talk to Anne in Sussex. What have you got for us, Anne? Afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon.
Hello.
I don't know whether to be delighted at the news or not, in all honesty, because I don't see how they can afford to actually meet what we need as a country, which is investment in our local industries, in our towns and cities. And the reason that caught me to ring you was when you were discussing air conditioning, because obviously that's an issue that really should come up on planning committees for housing. You know, the way that the weather can be so hot. And we were only discussing it this morning, the new leisure centres that are being built. And I said, you know, There's no air conditioning, so a day like today, going to your exercise class is going to be...
There's no air conditioning in the new leisure centre?
No, when I say leisure centre, it's the local hall, the community hall, not the leisure centre is a different place. It's the new community development that was built on the side of the town in Burgess Hill. And so I was saying, the trouble is that the way that local government has changed, we blame government for everything, but local government are really where we're all paying huge council taxes and where a lot of decisions affecting local people are made. The potholes come through local authorities.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we moan about, education is funded by local authorities.
Yeah, sure.
The care for elderly in the community, they've closed all the convalescent homes. They've closed all the places older people went for step-down care because they thought the private sector would pick it up. And I get really cross because when they brought in the cabinet system, that meant only a handful of people were in the decision-making process. Yeah. And in the way that's also the way in the unitary authorities compared to the population. So a lot of councillors are not involved in the decision-making. It's made by a smaller group of people.
Yeah.
Whatever party they are, it's what they want.
It's a very good point. It's a bit of a quirk or a kink in the democratic process in that respect, isn't it? Listen, Anne, I've got to run because the news is upon us. Great call, though. Thank you for that. Also celebrating, Damien Stevens says, Ian toasting Keir Starmer's resignation with a fat Cuban. He's not talking about Fidel Castro's daughter-in-law, but actually a true big lumpy old cigar. Good for him as well. Well done, Damien. Lots to come in the next section. 0344 499 1000. Your calls to that question. Will Andy Burnham change Britain? One of many questions we're going to be throwing out there over the course of this week. Right now, the time is exactly 3 o'clock. Let's get the latest news headlines on Talk.
The question my party is asking now is whether I am best placed to lead us into the next general election. I have heard the answer of my parliamentary party to that question, and I accept that answer with good grace. Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
Well, you know what? In the end, he did do the right thing, and there were some achievements, and he's an honourable man, and he cared about public service. Guys, that's not what happened just now. In the last half an hour, Keir Starmer resigned, and he resigned because he was pushed. Most of his issues, most of the things which have damned him from, let's face it, within days, within weeks of him becoming Prime Minister back in July 2024, or of his own making. They were things he chose to do, cutting the winter fuel allowance, damning everybody who wanted to have a public inquiry on the grooming gangs as jumping onto the far-right bandwagon, the two-tier policing after the Southport riots. This man brought it on himself. He was not a good Prime Minister.
There was two things on that manifesto. One was a picture of Keir Starmer and the word change. Well, promise made and promise delivered in that sense. If he's not, let's be honest. But look, I mean, I don't really want to make light of it, but I am cheesed off, Julia, because what we promised in opposition was competence, and it's been anything but. I'm embarrassed. I'm really, truly, honestly, I am embarrassed because I did think we would be competent. We've not been.
I've no idea whether there'll be a contest or a coronation. But what I do know is the British public have simply had enough of political parties chopping and changing their leaders at will. We vote for somebody in a general election to be our Prime Minister.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is an afternoon empire. 03444991000. It used to be an empire for Keir Starmer until he resigned this morning as Labour leader and therefore Prime Minister, announcing from the steps of Downing Street he's no longer best placed to lead the party into the next election, with nominations for his replacement opening on the 9th of July and a new leader expected before Parliament returns in September. And depending on whether or not anybody challenges Andy Burnham, in fact, nobody challenged him, Andy Burnham could be in situ about a week or two after that. It's that quick. So last Thursday, or only, it wasn't really an MP. In fact, he wasn't officially an MP until half an hour ago when he got sworn in. And yet in 3-4 weeks' time, he could be the Prime Minister in 3 weeks. That's extraordinary. He's confirmed, of course, he will stand to replace Keir Starmer with his path to number 10 already clear. So, and even Wes Streeting, by the way, former Health Secretary, has abandoned his own leadership ambitions and thrown his full weight behind the Makerfield MP within hours of Mr Starmer resigning. And Donald Trump has claimed vindication, having predicted Starmer's departure and blaming his downfall squarely on his failure to get a grip on things like immigration and energy. The US president says simply that Starmer failed badly, wishing him well on his way out. He'll be next, standing next to, in the Oval Office, there it'll be. It won't be Starmer anymore. It'll be Andy, the sandal-wearing socialist. More like Gandhi in those shoes. Andy Gandhi. I don't know. Whatever you want to do with that, it's up to you. I can't see Donald Trump sandling it up at the podium anytime soon. Paul in Burnley says, please stop calling Burnham the King of the North. He's not the King of the... No, I'm not. I'm refuting the title. He's not the King of Liverpool, Leeds, Newcastle, Sheffield, Blackpool. It's a really London-centric thing to do. Sadiq Khan is the Mayor of London. You wouldn't be calling him the King of the South. No, it's not even a London-centric thing. I don't know anybody that calls Andy Burnham the King of the North other than journalists. And that really came around, and journalists aren't, I promise you, all from London. Manchester Evening News. Google it, look up King of the North, you'll find it. He's the so-called King of the North because it's a very newsy sell, isn't it, for someone who's been moderately popular on his own patch. Who's coming down to London, even though he's probably lived in London more of his adult life than he's lived anywhere else, coming down to London to rescue the South. You know, it's all of that. But I certainly wouldn't say it's a London-centric thing. But I would also argue, whether it's a London-centric thing, a Mancunian thing, or anything else, it's a ridiculous thing to call a man who, I mean, by what accolade or qualification does he hold this title? Speaking of that, let's speak to the King of America. Michael Graham is with us, US commentator.
I am the self-declared King of America.
Indeed.
The
all of
barony
America.
of the East Coast. All of it. I'll take it all, absolutely. By the way, if I were king, I'd kick out all these Scottish soccer fans. They are really annoying us over here. Please take your Scots back.
What have the Scots
army
done?
or the... They're drinking up all the beer and they're putting traffic cones on everything. And what? And first of all, America's annoyed because it's soccer, and so we have no use for your third world kickball. And secondly, they're going around, they're singing loud. We're trying to have a nice, beer and watch a real sport like baseball or whatever. Yep. And then they're yelling and screaming, and it's just very, very annoying. They're taking over. By the way, how are you guys doing in the kickball?
Listen, I've got to tell you this. I mean, is it a bit ridiculous that the World Cup, the biggest football tournament in the world, is even being held in America? I mean, half of America don't even know what football, or soccer, as you call it, don't even know what it is.
The polls show only a third of Americans care at all. They have no interest whatsoever. But that third, it's like the Olympics. Every 4 years, people insist, you're going to care about guys who ski and shoot things. No, I'm not ever going to care. I'm not. And so we have to go through this. So now I have to pretend America's taking over. No, soccer is a 90-minute toothache on grass. It is an unwatchable, unbearable, insufferable event, much like the years that Keir Starmer was in power. I'm
indeed.
kidding. I kid
I
because
know. Well,
love.
just before we come to that, I mean, if you look at the NFL as the obvious example, this is now we're on territory that you recognise, Michael. Now, of course, they play a couple of league games over here now at Wembley, as I'm sure you're aware. It's kind of interesting how they transform Wembley into this, you know, although Wembley's kind of weird. 1 minute there's a football match, then there's the NFL, and then there's Coldplay the day after playing a gig.
Exactly.
So it's kind of interesting how they can, fair play to whoever works in those places that can transform it from one type of venue to another. But I still find it interesting. I mean, I've got a feeling America aren't going to win the World Cup. I just base that on, you know, history, but they might surprise us. I don't know. You know, it could be a moment that Donald Trump takes the glory on this. I've yet to read his predictive text because he predicted the demise of our own Prime Minister. There we are. We got it back.
By the way, a couple weeks ago, I was in Vienna, Austria, and I'm at a bus station, walking by a bus station thing, and there's a huge sign for a sporting event. And it's not soccer, and it's not whatever, opera. It was the Vienna Vikings, I think was the name. It was NFL-style local club football. Wow. That's what's happening, is American football. We're pushing it. You guys, you were able to hold off the Turks in the siege of Vienna in 1670. You will not stop American football from coming.
I think of Vienna. If you want me to think of culture, I think of violins and choral choirs playing against the backdrop of a nice illuminated fountain. Yep. I don't think of big beefy guys that date Beyonce. I mean, what's going on?
I saw it myself. By the way, I did see an opera while I was there, but it was fantastic. I love Europe. I love the UK. My wife and I are hoping to come over in a few months and hang out with you guys. But anyway, explain to me how Keir Starmer can be leaving, because I'm reading his speech that he gave today. Yeah. He says that the economy is growing fast, wages are rising faster than inflation, the NHS waiting list is getting shorter faster than it ever has, you're turning away the small boat crossings, asylum hotels are closed. How could you get rid of this guy? I'm reading his speech by him. He's kicking it. He's
we'd
like,
all vote for him based on that.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, and call me cynical, if he's not being entirely truthful with his resume.
Just a little. Yeah. And Trump, of course, Trump says he's gone because he was mean to Trump, and it's all about Trump. I assume the immigration issue is still red hot there. I mean, 10 years now since Brexit, you guys still cannot do something as basic as have a border. And that, I will just say, watching it happen in America, it was very frustrating. In fact, one of the reasons why Trump is suffering in the polls is his success. He fixed the border. I mean, we literally have a normal border. We still have 800,000-ish legal immigrants a year who come to live in America, and the borders work, and we don't have people just crossing whenever they want. You can do that. It's possible.
It's possible if you want
because
to
that issue's gone. Yeah, exactly. But now that issue's gone, you know how the voters are. It's like, what have you done for me lately? They don't. You fixed that 2 years ago. What are you doing now?
Yeah, that's true. And the midterms are going to be more than a little interesting in that respect. And I can hardly wait for that either. It's interesting over here where we have this curious system, and I don't know how you would find an equivalent to this in America, but the guy that's likely to be the next Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, wasn't even a member of Parliament until half an hour ago. I mean, I'm not even kidding you. Literally half an hour ago. He was sworn in. And in 3 weeks' time, he could be running the country. In 4 weeks' time, he could be walking across the White House lawn for his first meeting with your president.
And so you want me, a guy from a country where a guy was a TV reality show star who had never held public office becomes president of the United States. With the nuclear codes, I'm supposed to be surprised by a guy coming out of nowhere. I'm sorry, that's the wrong thing. But I'm curious, for the average person in Great Britain, what was the fundamental Starmer failure? Because the phrase that he used in his speech that jumped on me, he says, I'm leaving the UK stronger and more fair or fairer. Yeah. And I don't believe the stronger part at all. I would say that from America's side, you guys look weaker internationally, you look less relevant. The more fair part just exudes on our side of the pond. Oh, so he was a crazy left-wing woke guy who was, shoving guys dressed as women into bathrooms and punishing people for, texting things that are mean. So am I in the right neighborhood?
You're not just at the right neighborhood, you're in the right house. I mean, you're right in the living room. You're watching TV. watching the World Cup. That's as close as you are to this. Yes, right. I mean, it's interesting because, of course, the left-wing equivalent, they love this word fair, and you see it in their Twitter bios, don't they? They write things like, I believe in justice. And it's like, wait, we all believe in justice, you half-wit. Exactly. I don't like bullies. None of us like bullies. So they do this kind of stuff. And it's they dine out on this. It keeps them, you know, it keeps them warm and cosy in their bed at night, thinking, oh, I've taxed some people a little bit more, therefore that's a fair thing to do. And of course, there's no evidence for this. It's just a sort of platitude that's wheeled out. And Starmer really became, the problem was, as it became increasingly apparent very early on, Michael, that he didn't have a plan. There was, I think, you know, when Trump came in, you mentioned the unconventional route that Trump took, but of course that was back, you know, 2014 or so when he began his campaign for 2016, etc. Sure. So that's a while back. Starmer has been, you know, he was the head of the Director of Public Prosecution. He was the chief lawyer of the country before he became an MP. Then he became the leader of the Labour Party and then Prime Minister. Right. But he didn't have a plan. He didn't come in with any... There was no obvious underpinning philosophical direction, no political ideology. And everyone thought, well, this guy, surely, if nothing... He thought just by not being a Conservative was enough to take in that. And it turns out that despite being a lawyer, he would have stood there at the Old Bailey wearing one of those wigs and, you know, and performing to juries, you know, like lawyers do. They love all of that, don't they? He'd have done all of that. And you thought, well, he should be... Anyone who does that, you'd think could be quite good at the speaking bit. But he was not good at the speaking bit, and he just wasn't really good at any bit. And it turns out he was just a rubbish Prime Minister.
Right. And so...
And that's why I didn't get the job of his manager.
Exactly. And so when you see that the monarch of Manchester or this other guy... The
King of the North.
King of
Monarch of Manchester would have been better, actually.
Why wouldn't he say, OK, here's a thing I can do. We can secure the island's borders. And I do want to do all this other social spending. I want to build all this house, whatever. But we can do this. We can we can have a compassionate, fair way where the people who come here legally, they get treated one way. The people who cheat get treated another way. That's fair. We can do that and give like normal people something to hang on to. But based on the media coverage I've seen, he plans on going full, what we would call in the United States, full Mamdani. We have this new mayor in New York City, Zoran Mamdani.
Yes,
He's like, every day there's a crazy new lefty idea. He's like, sounds good. I'll take two. And so is that going to be what he does?
Yeah.
I mean, why not be the blue collar, I'm not going to make you compete with illegal wages, workers for wages. I'm not going to treat you unfairly by letting other people come in and take taxpayer-funded benefits. Why not do that and do the crazy left?
Yeah, well, you'd think so. I mean, the thing is with Andy Burnham, he was previously an MP. Under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. So he worked, he knows the territory. Then he left because he wasn't really getting anywhere. He tried to be the leader of the Labour Party, not once, but twice. They didn't want him. So he goes off to become the mayor of Greater Manchester, as distinct from just Manchester, but let's not get into that little technicality. That's a whole other ballgame. So he becomes the mayor of Greater Manchester, and now he's back to kind of do this. But you're right. I mean, why is there no big announcement? Right. What he did say, which is, again, if you want the mother of all platitudes, Michael, he said we need to get rid of 40 years of neoliberalism. Governments haven't been working. And he's talking about from Thatcher to the present day. We need to do things differently. What the heck does that mean? This guy's got two and a bit years to try and change the system.
And when you think about the progress that was made in regular people's lives from the time that Thatcher took office until the time she left, where there's this massive explosion of wealth. The number of people in the British middle class went up. People didn't see an opportunity to become middle class, suddenly found, oh my gosh, my labor is worth so much, I can become middle class too. And to say we've got to put an end to that, I'm sorry. So what do you want to go back to? Like massive labor strikes and trash mounting up in the streets and the explosion in costs? I mean, is that what you want to go back to? Here's one of the problems. Everybody thinks that somewhere out there, because technology has gotten so amazing, it's so amazing I can just think I want a pizza and my phone will call the guy and have it sent to my house. I mean, it's amazing. They think there's got to be some way to have everything be good and nothing be bad.
Yeah.
And we just don't live on that planet. I'm sorry. You got to work for a living. Stuff goes wrong.
Absolutely.
Stuff is expensive. Your work is worth something in the real world, you may think that you're the world's greatest guitar, garage guitar band guy. But if no one wants to pay to see you, that's no money.
Yeah,
and that's the way the world really is. Why not make it the best world for the most people instead of saying it can be a perfect world for all people? Because that just isn't possible.
And one of the things the left constantly do is believe that governments are more capable of doing things than they actually are. That, there's, that famous Reagan line of, the most haunting words in the English language, I'm from the government, what can I do to help?
And I'm here to help.
I'm here to help. That thing, and the left constantly think, well, the government can just do it. The government can just... The government can do very little, really. If you think about it, the governments don't build, they don't innovate, they don't engineer, they don't invent, they don't grow. Other individuals do that. Corporations do that. But it eludes the left, and they just, as I said earlier, Michael, they seem to be of the belief that as long as you can tax some people that are doing okay, then they go to bed and sleep nicely. It's almost that simple.
Well, there's the money, and then there's how you spend it. And so what I start not with the money, I start with how you spend it. And so I'll go back to this. When you give me a government that can do something as simple, particularly on a bleeping island, as keeping people from coming illegally. I mean, you got it made.
On an island.
Got this huge border with Canada. We've got this huge border with Mexico. You can walk into our country illegally. You guys have a freaking island, and you cannot keep people. Your government is too stupid to keep people out. Come on.
Yeah,
do
that's
that one thing, and then come talk to me about, we're going to manage your health care too. Don't worry. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
The most complicated thing in your whole life is, healthcare and brain surgery and cancer surgery, and we're going to run that. No. You do the keeping people off my island thing first, and then
that's a great piece. I hope Andy Burnham, and by the way, a prime minister called Andy in itself is worth an analysis on any other side.
I liked your Gandhi comment. I like the sandals and Gandhi.
Well,
you will never catch Donald Trump in sandals ever.
Yes.
You see him on the beach, he's got wingtips on. I'm telling you, there's no way.
He's got a big toe like a turtle's head, you just know it. Can I just finish on this? Comes from Kevin, who says, your American guest, his wonderful baseball is called Rounders here in Britain, a game played by schoolgirls.
And perfected by American men in the 1880s and turned into a fantastic sport where every time a batter is at the plate and every time a pitch is thrown, it is a scoring opportunity. That could be a score right then.
Yeah.
As opposed to soccer, where in 90 minutes, there are like 2 minutes and 32 seconds where something might happen that involves a score, which is why they shout goal for 20 minutes because they know it's going to be 20 minutes before anything happens.
My little boy's last head teacher at school, it happens to be an American, and he came over and he was trying to teach the kids in a kind of, it was a summer prize giving. He was trying to teach the kids, why sometimes losing, he said, if you play baseball, you don't always hit that ball. In fact, he gave the stats. Right. It was unbelievable how often.
Third of the time.
How often? Yeah, exactly. Indeed. And so to demonstrate this, he got a kid out the audience. He bought the baseball bat. He had the glove and everything. And I don't know why he decided to whack a baseball into the audience of a load of kids, striking one of their heads. They were fine, by the way. They managed, we really don't, but manage it fine. It was absolutely great, and it was just extraordinary. But that's the most interesting interpretation of baseball. Michael, we've got to go. Thank you. Michael Graham, US commentator, managing editor of Inside Sources, with us here on Talk.
In that sense, because if he's got
What they're ashamed of is the English flag. Scottish flag, fine. Welsh flag, fine. Irish, everything like that's marvellous. But no. We can't be English. And this has been going on for a long, long time.
He would be Prime Minister of the most toxic political brand in the country at the moment, which is Labour. And that is what we will be battling against.
Our Prime Minister is allegedly attacked by another nation and nothing is said.
This is a reminder that Russia regards the United Kingdom as a hostile power.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Andy Burnham has now been sworn in as a Member of Parliament for Makerfield. Of course, we know over the coming weeks, we will watch with interest if anybody by July the 9th decided to put their name in the ring for a leadership contest. Andy Burnham has already declared he will. Let's speak with Patrick Diamond, former Labour advisor. Firstly, Patrick, and good afternoon to you, by the way. Thank you for joining us. Keir Starmer, very emotional in that speech in Downing Street. I mean, there are many people saying, I'm not going to shed any tears. All of this demise was of his own making. What did you make of that moment, 9:30 this morning at Number 10?
Well, good afternoon, Ian. It's good to be with you as always. Yeah, it's a shocking moment. I mean, I think whatever you think about Starmer's performance as Prime Minister, having gained a majority of over 170 seats less than 2 years ago, many people expected he'd be around for a decade or at least, you know, a substantial period of time. So for him to go so quickly, almost so suddenly, I think it is shocking. But of course, the reasons are not difficult to explain. I mean, he'd become too unpopular and Labour MPs decided to roll the dice and try something different.
They are going to try something different. Keir Starmer came in and the criticism, it seems, in this respect, Patrick, was that there wasn't any great plan. There was no honeymoon period. That there was a lot of U-turns in there. There was Mandelson thrown in, etc. But I guess what we're looking at now, with what is clearly going to be Andy Burnham as Prime Minister, is a man who also is perhaps lacking a plan. What's the kind of Labour view on that?
I think that the irony with Andy Burnham is that he's seen as an outsider. Obviously, he's been Mayor of Manchester for a number of years, and he comes from outside the Westminster establishment. The thing about Andy Burnham to remember, though, is that he's a professional politician. He's been working in politics for 30 years. He is, I think everyone would agree, including members of Reform after the by-election, that he is a good communicator and he has a good rapport with voters. So people will hope that he can bring those political skills to explaining the government's policy decisions better than, frankly, Keir Starmer was able to. But none of that takes away from the fact that governing is very difficult and dealing with the substance of improving the economy, getting people's living standards better, making public services work is not going to be easy for any Prime Minister, including Andy Burnham.
That is true, particularly with the kind of economic restraints that are clearly out there at the moment. But of course, as you rightly corrected that point. I mean, he is establishment, isn't he? He's been, he was in the Blair government, he was in the Brown government, he served as Secretary of State, Culture, Health. I mean, he's been around the block for a long, long time. Arguably more experienced in terms of political establishment than Keir Starmer.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point. I mean, people don't like professional politicians, and I understand why in terms of the spin and the slickness and all the rest of it. But the truth is, at times you need politicians who understand how the system works, how to make it deliver for them, and also how to communicate well with voters. And Andy Burnham does have the experience to be able to do all of those things. Undoubtedly, he's worked in the machine for a long time. He can make things happen. And as we've said, he's a good communicator. But I would just underline that none of that means that his job is going to be easy. It'll be difficult for exactly the reasons it's been difficult for Keir Starmer.
And in terms of the kind of Prime Minister he will be, I think he will, you're right, I think he will be a better communicator. I think he will, have the kind of average person touch, if you like. He's got loads of that, but ultimately he won't be judged on the fact that he's got a northern accent. He'll be judged on what he can deliver and what direction he goes in. And there's always been this debate, bearing in mind he's been a Blairite, he's been a bit of a Corbynite. Who is Andy Burnham, Patrick? I mean, what way is he going to go? Does he take the party more down that old kind of Corbyn route, or does he try to modernise? What do you think his direction will be?
It's going to be a blend, and I think there are some policies he's put forward in Manchester that are seen as more left-wing. But when you look at Manchester, it's actually a good example of a good relationship between the public sector and the private sector working together to deliver jobs and bring businesses into the city. So I think ultimately Andy Burnham is a pragmatist. I mean, the challenges he's going to face are twofold. One is he's got to be able to say no. So there are decisions that he'll have to take where he says to people, I can't do that for you. And you have to accept it. And then the other thing is he has to prioritise. You can't do everything. The country needs a lot of things fixing. So where is his focus and priority going to be? And my thinking is at this stage, he hasn't decided those things yet, and he needs to. He needs to come into government with a clear plan. And I think, as you inferred earlier, one of the problems that Keir Starmer had was he came in without a clear strategy and programme and almost never recovered from that.
On that point, great to have you on, Patrick. Enjoy the rest of the day and the sunshine. Patrick Diamond, former Labour advisor. What direction do you sense Andy Burnham is going to go in? Over the course of this week, there's going to be all sorts of developments on this story. So we may get, in the coming days, another voice out there that says, yeah, I'm going to challenge on this one as well. At the moment, it's kind of unlikely. It doesn't seem there's anyone who's obviously putting their head above the parapet. Now, that's good and bad for Andy Burnham. The bad side is that he will forever be seen as a man that was coronated rather than went through a robust challenge and had to battle it out on the hustings with other Labour members to test the water, to see what Labour voters or Labour membership people thought of him. If he doesn't have to go through that, that could wound him and stay with him for a long, long time. The other problem he has is that it would also mean, if nobody challenges him, that he gets the job a lot quicker. So by literally under a month from where we're here, as we sit here now, he could be a working Prime Minister, not Prime Minister in waiting, not Prime Minister-elect, but as the Prime Minister, sitting in Downing Street with, 3 weeks now to put not just a government together, but an ideology together. Has this man been walking around for when did he leave Westminster last time? 2017? What, has he been mooching around the place, philosophically swatting up on the best way to do centre-left politics? I don't think he has. He's been running Greater Manchester as the mayor. And in 3 weeks, he's got to come up with a plan that's going to completely recharge, recalibrate the political system to the point that we all feel, wow, this guy's made us better off than we ever thought possible. Jeff says, Burnham is just another WEF-controlled puppet, same as Starmer. Nothing will change. I don't know about the WEF bit, but I think he's a puppet. Don in Chelmsford says, if Burnham started by abandoning net zero and said, drill, baby, drill, he'd become popular overnight. Thank you, Don, for that. One in from Teresa. Ian, I don't get it. I've no idea who Andy Burnham is. So how can he just walk into the most important job in the country? He's only been in government for 5 minutes. Unbelievable. He's not even in government. He's just been in Parliament for 5 years. 5 minutes, even. Liam Halligan's going to join us in a few moments. I'm our favourite economist, a man who really does get right to the heart and the centre of things. And that interesting question, remember, we keep talking about who the next leader is. It's going to be Andy Burnham. But the real crucial nut to the bolt on this is who the Chancellor is likely to be. Liam joins us next here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Starmer on the verge of tears as he resigns. Andy Burnham grinning like a man who just became Prime Minister, because he's about to, as he hot-footed it from Euston to Westminster, signed along the dotted line, pledged allegiance to the King, and off he goes, ready to, well, he wouldn't say it out loud, but clearly get the machine in operation, ready for the big job. Liam Hannigan, the economist, is with us. Liam, afternoon to you.
Good to be with you, Ian.
Nice to have you with us as ever. I was just saying before you came on there, all eyes and the big focus is on Andy Burnham, understandably so. But equally, some might even argue more important, is who gets the number 2 job, and that's not Deputy Prime Minister, Chancellor of the Exchequer. A big gig, decisive one as well.
Absolutely pivotal at this moment, Ian, because there's obviously a lot of theatre today. Britain does political theatre, all the pomp and circumstance, the swearing in Parliament and so on. We do that very well. But what's really going on here is around the world, financial markets are wondering if this means Britain's Labour government's going to become even more left-wing. Are we going to increase taxation, borrowing and spending even more? I don't wish to rain on Andy's parade. I personally quite like Andy Burnham. I've known him for 30 odd years, as I wrote in my Telegraph column just this weekend, and I think he's broadly a decent bloke. But he and I, while we have the same values, we want what's good for ordinary people across the UK. We have a very different idea about how you get there.
Yeah.
He wants to tax and spend because that's what his trade union paymasters, the Labour MPs and activists want him to do, because for them to understand economic reality would jar against their statist tribal instincts. I'm free to say what actually works, and what doesn't work is driving the tax burden up to a 70-year high and paying more on debt interest than you spend on education, which is where we currently are in the UK, on the brink of a proper financial meltdown.
Yeah.
And yet these Labour MPs, activists and trade union bosses, they want even more taxation, even more borrowing, even more spending. And Andy could be a great communicator, and he is, and he can wear what they call shackets, cross between shirts and jackets, and he can put on his Adidas sneakers, and he can...
And his sandals now as well, Liam.
All that really matters, Ian, for ordinary men and women, their lives and livelihoods over the next 3 to 6 months, is if we avoid a fiscal meltdown.
Yeah.
And we're not going to avoid a fiscal meltdown if the Labour Party indulges in a kind of orgy of statism, more spending, more borrowing, because, quotes, it's the right thing to do. There's nothing progressive about driving the economy over a cliff and causing a financial crisis.
Does it matter if the Chancellor of the Exchequer is not economically savvy? Now, that might sound like a stupid question in some respects, but we've had quite a few chancellors who haven't even worked in the TSB, let alone in the city or running a company or anything. And historically, I was talking to a guest about this from the Mail a little earlier, Liam. I mean, there's, the doctor in the House of Commons very rarely gets given the brief as Health Secretary. It doesn't always follow that your area of expertise... I don't know why that is. Maybe you're too involved in something to be given the job. Maybe it means you're biased. I have no idea. But you'd think with the economy, with the Chancellor, I think of people like Nigel Lawson and people like that were engaged, and they were, they were across it, they were on it, they knew about running stuff, they were serious, sort of the adults in the room. I don't really see Rachel Reeves in that way. I know she's got economic qualifications. I don't dispute that. I know her chronology was a little bit iffy on her CV, but Wes Streeting, I'm not aware that he's ever got anything in this area, and yet he's being talked about as potential next Chancellor.
Well, what really matters, rather than very specific economic knowledge, is judgment. And at no time in my adult life, Ian, have we ever required this country now to have a Chancellor that exhibits judgment and conveys competence and prudence to the outside world. Otherwise, as I say, and I've been saying this for a couple of years, as you know, And now people like the chief economist of the IMF agree with me. The former deputy governor of the Bank of England agree with me. A whole bunch of economists agree with me who haven't got the bottle, frankly, to upset their progressive friends and talk about what's actually happening. We are in a very dangerous situation. We're spending more on debt interest, as I said, than we spend on education, twice what we spend on defence. Well over 120 billion quid a year on debt interest, not on nurses and doctors and schools and hospitals, on servicing debt that's increasingly held by overseas hedge funds, speculators, not the long-standing pension funds that used to hold those debts issued by the British government. So we desperately need a chancellor who understands that if they keep borrowing and spending in order to please their mates in the Labour Party or the trade unions, they will trash this economy. What will happen? The gilt yield, the cost of government borrowing, will spike up even more. It's already easily the highest in the G7. It will spike up even more. It's already way above where it was at the time of the so-called emergency under Liz Truss, way higher, and it has been for most of the last year under Labour, because they're borrowing and spending so much. If they go even more statist, even bigger borrowing, even more taxation that slows the economy down and actually generates less tax revenue, the cost of government borrowing, and we just borrowed £23 billion in the single month of May. That news came out on Friday when all the excitement of the Makerfield by-election result was dominating the airwaves. If we keep borrowing more, you're going to get a massive spike in government borrowing costs, a massive increase in inflation, cost of living crisis that makes the post-COVID cost of living crisis look like a picnic, and then you will get proper cuts, deep austerity, because you'll have to reconvince financial markets all over again what it's taken us a couple of generations since the mid-70s when we were last bailed out by the International Monetary Fund, that actually the British government is run by grown-ups. Gives me no pleasure to say this, particularly not on a sunny day. I don't want to be some kind of, Scrooge austerity monger sandwich board man, but people with public platforms who actually have understanding of economics have to start speaking out now, rather than currying favour with the government so you get some nice sinecure, some nice job that allows you to be a consultant in later life. We have to start saying, guys, you cannot borrow and spend more because you're going to destroy the economy.
You'd think anybody would know that. I mean, you haven't even got to be an economist to work that out.
During that meltdown, the poor will suffer most.
Yeah. 100%. So what could a new Prime Minister, Mr Burnham, and his Chancellor, what could they announce? And I think they've got to do it almost day one. What could they announce in terms of a direction of travel that would placate those areas, all of those bear traps you've just referred to, Liam? What would they have to say standing there on the steps of number 10 and 11?
At the very least, they have to promise to do nothing in terms of the fiscal rules. Don't try and make the fiscal rules more sophisticated, because all you're doing is loosening them again. Since we had these fiscal rules, they've always been a fiction, but they've been changed over a dozen times in recent years to make them looser and looser and looser. Rachel Reeves did the same herself. If we come in now, a trade union-backed new Labour MP, as I said, somebody very much backed by the left of the party, the left baying for extra spending, extra taxation, extra borrowing, so they can just hand out more money. As Pat McFadden, who is a very wise man in the Labour cabinet, he'd make a good chancellor, I think. Best of a bad bunch anyway. He's the guy who admitted in those emails, those notorious emails, that all I ever hear is from Labour MPs asking me what taxes can we raise to give more away in welfare? And I paraphrase slightly, but they were his words. So if Andy comes in, if he says, look, we're going to stick to the fiscal rules and we're going to stick exactly to the existing government spending plans, then the markets would at least breathe a sigh of relief for now. But already markets are really worried because they know that the spending trajectory and the taxation trajectory that Reeves laid out, in order to spend more, as she has in the last couple of years, it suggests that OBR's numbers that the government gives them, the OBR's projections suggest that the government's going to have to raise taxes a lot already in the run-up to the next general election scheduled for 28-29. No one really believes that. So we're already going to overshoot the fiscal rules anyway. And if Burnham comes in and the Chancellor isn't somebody, extremely responsible, seen to be on the right of the Labour Party, someone in the mould of Rachel Reeves, maybe Res Streeton could get away with it because sometimes he's called a Blairite rather than a Brownite or a Corbyn. Unless he does that, then I'm afraid you're going to see the gilt yield spike. That sounds really arcane, but what that means is that borrowing costs right across the economy go up, whatever the Bank of England says. Borrowing costs are driven by financial markets, not by people in the Bank of England. They're the mood music. But if the market moves, there's nothing the Bank of England can do in order to, systematically rein in those higher borrowing costs. And those higher borrowing costs will impact investment, a lot of people's mortgages, personal loans, as well as the cost of government borrowing, which will squeeze spending right across the piece on benefits, on public sector wages, on all kinds of things that we want the government to do, but which they won't be able to do if they can only borrow money at an extremely high interest rate. And I'm afraid that is where we are heading.
So that's the good news. What do you think, Liam, when we get to July the 9th, just a separate point from the specifics of everything that you brilliantly and thoroughly run over there, do you sense there's going to be another name putting their hat in the ring, as it were? Just a final point.
No, I don't, because Andy, fair play to him, won the Makerfield by-election, not just convincingly, he knocked the ball out of the park, as our American cousins say. He got an absolute majority of those who voted. He got 55% of the turnout, which was really astonishing. So I don't think anybody in the Labour Party is going to challenge him.
Yeah.
All the more reason that he has to be seen to be doing things that are fiscally responsible, because he is now master of all these surveys within the Labour Party. But the Labour Party, the activists, the trade unions, the MPs are going to be, their expectations are going to be sky high. So he's got to demonstrate to financial markets that he can actually, not believe his own hype. He can be responsible. And I don't want to sit on a sunny day and be overly gloomy, but it's astonishing to me. I don't hear anyone talking about the amount that borrowing has gone up by this government and the fiscal dangers that Andy Burnham faces. Yes, of course, we've got to go through the procedure and the lectures and the human side of Starmer resigning and all the rest of it. But around the world, this is what they're thinking.
Sure.
This is what Britain has become, a country that may or may not fall over the edge of a fiscal precipice. And whether or not it does is completely in the hands of Andy Burnham and whoever he appoints as Chancellor. Ed Miliband,
forget
the bond markets will muller him. They will muller him. And I think the bond markets are going to veto Ed Miliband becoming Chancellor.
Yeah, I think that there was a moment, wasn't there, where that appeared to be up for a bit of discussion. It seems to have been tucked away now, that one. So thank goodness for that. Listen, Liam, brilliant stuff, brutal honesty, experienced commentary from Liam Halligan, the economist. Thank you to him. You can see the danger zones that he just pointed out there. Peter's in Oxfordshire. Peter, what have you got for us? Afternoon to you.
Hello, Ian.
Hello.
Yeah, always interesting to hear what Liam's got to say. And, of course, he's absolutely right on the economic side.
Yeah.
But the point I wanted to make was that Reform may be pushing it a bit with this, we must have an early election, because Burnham might well decide that the factor that is going to influence people most is whether we've got the feel-good factor. Now, if England were to win the World Cup and Andy Burnham were to play it fairly low-key for a short while, we only need to go back to 1966 when we won the World Cup. Harold Wilson called an election about 3 months after that and won it handsomely.
Yep.
And Burnham's the real question for Burnham is, does he want to take the risk and get 5 years, or is he going to carry on with 3 years with a big majority? But Reform did not do well. Reform did not do well in Makersfield.
No, they didn't.
Bad result for Reform.
It was, and of course they're still not home and dry in terms of it being a guarantee even in working class areas, which would we understand from all the other polling, is their kind of electoral base. And there's been a couple of by-elections where the Greens got in on one of them. Burnham's now got in on this one. They've done well in council seats, so that's they've got that, and they do still head the polls. But you're absolutely bang on.
I mean, that is going to be the difficulty.
Yeah.
They still need. I don't know. They may have 600 candidates, and however many they need to put in the House of Lords, and how many advisors they need to bring in, and to bring forward all the policies that they need in order to, I'd like to see them do well, but is it really in their best interest to have an election in the next couple of months?
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I know why parties call for it. I can understand Farage's position, saying we deserve an election. Even Andy Burnham had previously said it, as we established when Rishi Sunak was planted in, as he called it, into number 10. Listen, I've got to move. Peter, you've been brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for that. It's a good point. If there was an election, see, if there is a school of thought with Andy Burnham and other vainglorious politicians, which, let's face it, is most of them, that if you do 2.5 years, you can forever say, I was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. So from even if you flopped and failed like a swine, you'd forever be able to say, yeah, I lived in number 10, lived at Chequers, flew across the world, went to the White House, the opening of this and the first speech of that. It's something very few people will ever be able to say they did, and I think Burnham wouldn't be the first. So, I mean, it's a very lazy and slightly almost criminal way to look at things, but Burnham wouldn't be the first if that was anywhere in his thinking. He, of course, would categorically deny such an approach. 0344 499 1000. Back with more from you coming next on Talk.
Ashamed of is the English flag. Scottish flag, fine. Welsh flag, fine. Irish, everything like that's marvellous. But no. We can't be English. And this has been going on for a long, long time.
He would be Prime Minister of the most toxic political brand in the country at the moment, which is Labour. And that is what we will be battling against.
Our Prime Minister is allegedly attacked by another nation and nothing is said.
This is a reminder that Russia regards the United Kingdom as a hostile power.
The question my party is asking now is whether I am best placed to lead us into the next general election. I have heard the answer of my parliamentary party to that question, and I accept that answer with good grace. Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
Well, you know what? In the end, he did do the right thing, and there were some achievements, and he's an honourable man, and he cared about public service. Guys, that's not what happened just now. In the last half an hour, Keir Starmer resigned, and he resigned because he was pushed. Most of his issues, most of the things which have damned him from, let's face it, within days, within weeks of him becoming Prime Minister back in July 2024, or of his own making. They were things he chose to do, cutting the winter fuel allowance, damning everybody who wanted to have a public inquiry on the grooming gangs as jumping onto the far-right bandwagon, the two-tier policing after the Southport riot, riots. This man brought it on himself. He was not a good Prime Minister.
There was two things on that manifesto. One was a picture of Keir Starmer and the word change. Well, promise made and promise delivered in that sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 0344 499 1000. A reminder, of course, 2026 World Cup officially in full swing. Here at Talk, we are celebrating bit of style. How do you fancy getting your hands on a massive £26,000 in tax-free cash? 23,000 quid. Imagine what you could do with that. Quite a lot. If you could do with a bit of a boost to your bank balance this summer, and who couldn't, here's how you could enter.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 8338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1 PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 8338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
Lots to get through. Jackie says, we have no economically literate politicians in the Labour Party, which is why the country is in managed decline. Andy Burnham is a natural tax and spend when we have no money. It's a recipe for disaster. Here's the thing, though. You know, Liam Halligan just came on there and was talking about the, you know, how this thing works objectively. Talking about how it works and what the realities are. So objective reality. Think about it. He's not coming at it from a political perspective. He's simply talking about the bare bone facts of sixth form economics. Now, if he knows that, Andy Burnham must know that. And even if he didn't know that, at least some people around him would know that. There's one serious player in the pack that could say, Andy, look, if you're going to go down that route, you're stuffed. You're out of job before you've even started, mate. So, and you can't do that like, well, I'm going to play a little bit of a game. I'll do a little bit of that. I'll do a nod over there to that lot and a nod over there to... No, that's why we've had 7 prime ministers in 10 years. Or 8, is it 8? We're about to have something of... That's why, because PMs have been doing that garbage. And they're doing it with our lives, and hard-working Brits are paying the price. Peter's in Liverpool. Peter, what have you got for us? A fella Scouser is about to become a Prime Minister. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm not proud of that, to be honest. My experience of Andy Burnham, but that's it. What it rang for was that his acceptance speech on the day of the Makersfield election.
Yes.
He mentioned, I think he's mentioned it twice, about the United States, the divided politics of the United States. Well, as far as I'm concerned, there's never been a more divided country than Britain at the moment.
Yeah, huge.
We've just come through 2 years of the worst Prime Minister that we've ever had in history. In my lifetime, I'm getting on a bit, and I can tell you this is the worst. I mean, this guy... You're talking about his legacy. His legacy for me is when he stood up after Southport and said that people couldn't be angry and he would fast-track them. And that's what he did. He fast-tracked people to prison. Yet people went to prison like Lucy Connolly.
But did they? I'm not here to defend him though, Peter. And Keir Starmer wouldn't have solely, been the bloke in charge of that because there's a system in place. But that did happen in 2011 as well with the riots. Whenever there's riots, you're fast-tracked and you go to jail. Do you remember there was a student who went to jail for 18 months for nicking a bottle of Evian water?
For someone who was in charge of justice in this country,
true,
there seems to be nothing but injustice. When
yes, good point.
Somebody can go to prison for a tweet for 3 years, yet somebody molests a child will do 12 months.
But haven't we always had those like clunky and frankly horrific?
I don't think
examples?
I don't think it's been as obvious as we've got at the moment. And I don't think, with regard to Andy Burnham, I really don't think he's going to be the man that's going to change anything at all.
Because he's got to change. He's got to. I mean, he said, didn't he, about changing? You know, the last 40 years of how we've been governing.
I think the last time I spoke to you, Ian, I mentioned that I spoke to Andy Burnham. Well, must be 15 years ago.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
On local radio.
Yeah.
And he said I was a racist because I believe in borders, and you know.
Staggering, isn't it, that people would believe that that makes you a racist?
Ian, I grew up in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And, you know, this racism that people go on about in those days is nowhere near as bad as it is today. The people, the left, are making this racism today.
I completely agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more on that very point. All of the initiatives that are supposedly put in place. I'm not talking about the stuff like in football, show racism the red card and kick it out. All of that stuff's been, really had its place and did a job. I'm talking about the DEI initiatives and critical race theory and all this stuff, which actually creates the problem it purports to solve, because it never solves it. It just creates the problem. Listen, Peter, I've got to run because Kevin O'Sullivan has just walked into the studio. That in itself is a delightful fact of life. Thank you to Peter in Liverpool. Kevin, I don't know if you've seen the news, but the Prime Minister's resigned.
Yes. Has he? Oh, God.
Yes.
I'm going to have to rip up the copybook and start again.
You were going to do What's Your Favourite Simpsons episode.
I was going to.
There's far more pressing issues now.
Yeah, actually, my favourite Simpson episode is probably more interesting than the departure of Starmer. But... I mean, have you seen them? All those brown-nosing Labour types, all posing behind Andy, for the selfies at Westminster. Can I have a job in your useless administration, please? And so on and so forth. I mean, we're going to look at where Starmer's gone wrong, what his principal mistakes are, and what Andy Burnham is actually about. Who's he going to sack? He must surely sack Rachel Reeves and David Lammy, because they're synonymous with Starmer. He can't promise change and leave the big people in the same jobs in the cabinet, I wouldn't have thought. What is he about? Is he going to shift